So, hi everybody, this is Jenny from Miami Lit Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, Laura from How to
Hi.
Get Your Shit Together,
Hello.
which I love your channel.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I found you. I want to say excuse me. So my little one, oh my voice, what's wrong with it? Hold on. Tea time.
But that's always the way. As soon as you start recording anything, my voice
Right?
goes the same. Yep, yep. And then you want to drink water, but not so much
Right,
that
'cause
you have
then
to
I
stop in the middle
choke
of
on water. That's
Yeah.
like the story of my life.
I'm with you. I hear
Very
you.
professional here.
I like it
So,
casual though.
yeah. What was I saying? Okay, so I found you when my little one was, she had turned 1, and I went through like this big life change. So I
Mm.
left the classroom as a teacher, and I decided I was going to be Martha Stewart, and my house was going to be perfect.
Ambitious. I
And,
like it.
right? So a month goes by, and everything I thought, I was so wrong. There were no brownies in the oven. Nothing was perfect. Everything was dirty. And I was still in my PJs at 1 p.m.
You're
So,
basically describing my life right there.
so I started, I don't even recall what I looked up, but one of your videos popped up where you started talking about Marie Kondo. And I was like, what?
Yes.
What is this? What is this
Mm.
thing? So I feel like you walked me through getting my shit together.
But that's the whole point of the whole thing. That's great. It's working clearly.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm trying. I'm trying. I feel like it's
Yeah.
a process, a lifelong process for me. But yeah, so it's super cool for me to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's super cool to be here.
Thanks. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Irish, in case anyone didn't pick that up from the accent. I am married. I have an 8-year-old daughter. And like you, I really struggled after she was born. I had this kind of idea of what motherhood would be like. Um, and it just wasn't that way. Before she was born, I had my life together as much as possible. I was a lawyer, married, had moved into our first home, and I thought, baby, now this is it. Like I'm on track for like the perfect life, quote unquote. Um, but then as soon as you have a baby, as I'm sure you can understand, like all of that goes out the window,
Hmm.
like everything. And I'm very type A, like I'm very much a perfectionist. I like being in control. I like things being a certain way. And obviously babies are not conducive to that. So that really hit me hard. And that's kind of what started me on this whole journey of trying to get my shit together, because back then it most certainly was not, not at all.
Right. It's so interesting though out of that chaos, your response was to build this little space where you can figure things out. Because I feel like I would have just crawled into a hole, into the fetal position, and just waited.
I was in that hole for a year and a half. It took me a
Oh
year and a
wow.
half before I did start it. At the time, I just couldn't focus on anything else. Like just getting out of bed in the morning was a struggle, honestly. Um, it was really, really hard at the time. And it took me a long time to feel healthy enough and to feel strong enough before I started to pull myself out of that. I did a lot of research online at the time, same as you, looking things up. And kind of, I guess, back then there wasn't so much information, I feel, for new mothers. I was looking for ways to kind of feel a little bit more in control and feel a little bit more organized. And there was a lot of information out there, but I don't feel it was really tailored to somebody who was dealing with a newborn baby or dealing with kind of mental health struggles or anything like that. And I think after a while, I started to kind of create that for myself, because I figured if I was looking for it and couldn't find it, maybe someone else was looking for it and couldn't find it. So it was never intentional. It started out as kind of just a little personal project where I figured I would share what was working for me, and maybe like through the comment section or something, other people could share what was working for them, and I could build some sort of like support network, I guess. And that's how it all kicked off, really unintentional. But no, it did take me a long time before I was in a place where I was ready and willing and able to do any of that.
Right. Yeah, it can be a process.
Absolutely. It's really, you have to take care of yourself first before you
Yeah.
can give anything of yourself. If there's nothing to give, you're not in a
Right.
great position. So you have to kind of, that phrase of you have to fill up your own cup first. And mine was empty for a long, long time. And
Yeah.
that was a long process to getting that to a point where I felt like I could share something of myself again and feel like myself again. I
Right.
really lost my identity as an individual
Mm-hmm.
um, after I had a baby. And I felt like, motherhood was kind of the final stage of my life, I guess. Like I felt like there was maybe nothing after that. I couldn't see how there could be anything left just for me
Right.
after that. So it took a while for me to, get to grips with that and really find myself again, or at least part of myself again, and then build on that, over the years.
And all the
Yeah.
guilt, right? I don't know if you felt that way, but I had so much guilt for wanting my own space back, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not
I
supposed to feel this way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not just that, but like you were saying, like, why am I not like the Martha Stewart? Why do I not have brownies in the oven? Why am I still in my PJs at 1 a.m. or 1 p.m.? And that's something that actually a therapist helped me with quite recently. Actually, I kind of explained that whole situation to her, and she just helped me see that there are different kinds of mothers. There are different types of mothers. Like motherhood looks different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And every mother is a good mother, regardless of what you want for yourself. Um, that you don't have to feel that guilt. And I did carry that guilt and that shame around with me for a long, long time. And it was only when I spoke to her that I saw, you know what, there are different types of mothers. Some
Yeah.
mothers are the kind of stay at home and bake all day type of mothers, and other mothers are, more career driven. And like I said, you have to fill up your own cup. If you're not happy with, the aspects of your life that you have left for yourself, you're not going to be able to give back to the others, in your family, in your
Mm-hmm.
life. So that was kind of a turning point for me, realizing that, just because I was a different type of mother to what is maybe portrayed in the media does not at all mean that I am a bad mother. So
Right.
that was something that really helped me.
And I think that your type of mothering is probably the most common, right? The modern day woman who's doing it all and having to, you know, yeah.
Certainly trying, but not always
Well,
succeeding.
I don't know, Laura. I think you're doing pretty well.
I think that's a lot to do with social media, just sharing a lot of highlights and stuff. I can assure you there are not so good days. I do try, but I have realized, after 8 years of living with her now, that there is that balance, and I'm still working on finding that balance. And it's it gets easier as she gets older because
Mhm.
she's a little bit more independent and can kind of take care of herself a lot, get her own snacks and things like that.
Right.
But it's no, it's definitely not easy, and I'm definitely not. I don't bake for a start. I'm not like a crafty person, so I don't craft with her. It is hard, but I try and work from home as much as I can, and spend time with her. And some days it works out great, and other days it doesn't. And that's, I think, what we're all dealing with.
Right.
Can't all have perfect days, otherwise what would be left out of
Yeah.
life? If your life was perfect, there'd be nothing to look forward to, there'd be nothing to strive for. So that thought
Hmm.
keeps me going, that if life were perfect, that would be it. That would be the end,
Yeah.
essentially. You have to keep striving and keep learning and keep going and trying new things and experimenting, and sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding. And that's all part of the dance, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I'm so glad you touched on that need for perfection because I think that was the big like aha
Mm.
moment for me. Because I also am one that tends to need things to be a very certain way, and if they're not, I can lose my shit, and
Yes.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yes, I
So
do all too well.
so once I realized I can't have those kind of standards for myself as a mom and measure my day as a mom on this bar where if it's not perfect, then I failed. Because then what am I really teaching my kids? I don't want to be that
Yes,
person, that,
exactly. And
yeah,
perfection is so, sometimes you might have a great day where you feel like everything has gone right. But as I said,
yeah,
that's not something that you can maintain. Otherwise, life would
right,
be very dull, very boring. I think to me, a thought that helped me years ago, because like I said, I am a perfectionist and I do kind of strive for that and I'm quite ambitious, but it helped me to kind of rephrase it in the sense that I wasn't, looking for, I wasn't trying to achieve perfection. I was just trying to get myself closer to perfection. So again, kind of looking at it in terms of a process, just trying to get a little bit better at something and then, trying to get a little bit better in another area. And I feel much better about that now that I'm constantly striving for perfection, but understanding that that is a process and that I would probably never get there. Or if I do, I'll find myself back at square one the next day.
exactly. And then it starts all over again.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
don't feel like the phrase that I say is progress towards perfection rather than, progress over perfection, because I feel like for a
right.
perfectionist, that phrase does not ring true. So to me, I think of progress towards perfection, that it's not out of my grasp. I am constantly striving for that and going for it, but knowing
Right.
that it is a process and it is kind of down the road. It's more of a destination type situation. And I'm improving as I go and learning more things as I go that are getting me closer to that perfection, if it
Yeah.
exists.
You put it perfectly and beautifully. Yeah, it's a progress.
It is,
And
yeah.
as
And
long as yeah.
you really have to be cognizant of that and kind of see it as, like maybe when you're reading an article or something and you have like a progress bar at the top, like that to me is my life. Like I'm constantly getting closer and closer. And that's just what I'm working on now, getting that bar closer to kind of the finish line rather than constantly expecting it to be there. So that is a kind of mental shift, a different perspective that has helped me on those days where I just want to throw my hands up, go back to bed.
Oh man, yes. Those days are always there. Which
Yep.
sometimes are necessary and it's okay
Yeah.
to give in once in a while and just go, you know what? Today I'm just gonna take it easy.
Yeah. Today's going to be a nap day.
Yeah,
Naps and snacks. Like those days.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
sometimes you have to realize that those days can be perfect too. Like it can just be the perfect relaxing day. And not everything, when we think of perfection or we think of productivity, we tend to think of constantly being working and
Hmm.
constantly doing something. But there can be like the perfect rainy day. There can be
Yeah.
the perfect reading day. So thinking of it in terms of that, there can be the perfect learning opportunity. Um, that's how I try and focus on things now, focusing on having the perfect rest, perfectly
Yeah.
recharging and rejuvenating. Something like that, even just the perfect watching TV experience, you know? So those are things that I try and focus on now, that perfection is not always about, being on
Hmm.
24/7 and working and producing and creating. You can be perfectly rested and, perfectly happy and perfectly idle as well.
Yes. Yes. And those are usually the best days, at least for
Oh
me.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like we glorify being busy so much
Yes.
that when we finally stop, it's it's like it's an out of body experience. You're not supposed to be idled.
Yeah, and I feel like this is kind of, it ties in with the problem that we have with stuff as well and with clutter, because when we let go of that stuff, we feel like a failure because we're
Hmm.
constantly being sold this idea that more is better and that you should be progressing up the ladder. Like there's a corporate ladder and there's a life ladder. And in corporate, we kind of understand the steps that we need to take. We understand how to move up that ladder. And the same in life, bigger house, better car, more exotic holidays or whatever it might be, more money. And that's the idea that we're sold. So when we take a step back from that, or when we don't feel like we are progressing up that ladder, we start to feel like a failure. We start to feel like we have lost our place in the hierarchy. We don't know where we fit in, I guess. And when you have spent a lifetime, being fed that idea that you have to climb this ladder, when that's a belief that is ingrained in you, and then you stop to question it, or you pause, or you change how you run your days, that can be really difficult, because it feels like a loss of identity. It feels like a loss of your beliefs. And it can be a really upsetting, challenging experience, because everything you knew, or everything you thought you knew, suddenly has been thrown into question. And I think that's why we fear getting rid of stuff. And that's why we fear taking a break, because if we're not climbing the ladder, what
We're
are we
falling
doing?
behind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's not the case at all. Like with the different types of mothers, there are different types of lives, different ways that you can enjoy your life, and different ways that you can be creative and fulfilled and satisfied in your life without needing this ladder, without this constant exertion and this constant forward motion.
Right. Would you say that what got you on this path was the Marie Kondo method, or you were already on it?
I would think so. I've always been kind of an organized person, but also had a bit of a shopping habit. So
Yes,
I
nice
would,
to meet you. I'm right there with you.
where I think a lot of us can relate to that, where we want kind of the slower pace of life, but we are driven by consumerism and advertising and this need for more, because
Mhm.
that's what we've been told, that those are all the messages that we've seen growing up. So I have always kind of tried to be organized. And failed, I guess. And then, like I said, when I had my daughter, it really came to a head, and it really became a massive issue, because obviously babies come with a lot of extra stuff. And I just was not prepared for that. I mean, I thought I was, but I don't think anyone is truly prepared for it. So, yeah, as I said, I started looking up ways that I could be more organized, ways that I could improve my mental health, and articles about, minimalism and slow living and that type of thing kept popping up. So I kind of dove down that rabbit hole, which is when I saw that book was recommended, Marie Kondo's book. And I figured, what, I'd give it a go. I would read it, join some Facebook groups about it, things like that. And that's where it all kind of officially started, like really started changing my life in bigger and better ways. Yeah.
Definitely. For anybody, which I think everyone's familiar with Marie Kondo method, but just in case there's anybody out there that who still don't know who this amazing lady is, how would you sum up her book or methodology,
Um,
I should say?
So I think you move by category, starting with your clothes. You basically get them all into one pile, and you go through everything one by one, and you ask yourself if it sparks joy. And you will kind of know, you have a feeling. It's like finding your wedding dress, or,
Mhm.
something like that. You have those moments where you just know whether it's right or whether it's not. And when you hold all of your items, if you don't feel it, if you don't feel that spark of joy, then you just thank it and you send it on its way, essentially.
Right.
That's the basis of the method. And it does sound a little out there when you first hear about it. So if anyone is kind of rolling their eyes right now, it's like, I was you. I was you. And there are certain aspects to it like that can seem a little out there or a little unusual. But I think when you actually try it, you're amazed at the difference that it makes in your life. Part of it is the shock factor. When you pile all of your clothes on a bed, and this is a comment that I get a lot actually, anytime I, create a video about decluttering, and let's say I am piling all of my clothes on a bed, every single time I will get a comment from at least one person, if not multiple, saying, you have too many clothes. And I think that's something that's easy to say. And yes, I do admit that I do have a lot of clothes. That's one of those categories that just kind of brings me joy.
Right.
But you don't understand the amount of stuff you have until you put it all in a pile. It's like you don't understand the amount of stuff you have until you try to move house and you're trying to pack it
Yes.
all up. And then it becomes obvious to you. So I think you need to try it for yourself, even if you think you don't have that much stuff. You know, when I first piled up my clothes, even though I knew I had a lot, seeing it all in one pile is a moment you will never forget. It's not a fun moment, but at the same time, you know that it's only going to get better from there, that you will kind of whittle down that mountain, make it into a little
Right.
molehill. Um, but that is the essence of it, you know, piling up all of your stuff category by category and going through it and being quite methodical about it and essentially just going through your entire home like that. So
Right.
that's,
And ending
uh,
up with things that you actually really, really enjoy being around.
yes, absolutely. And it's still, I think, even though she describes it as a one-time thing, and I do
Mhm.
agree with that in the sense that I think you're probably only going to have that first shocking experience once. I do think that as life goes on, you will have to make some tweaks and changes. You know, there
Mhm.
are things that sparked joy for me years ago that no longer do. And that's just part of the maintenance of it. So I still do, you know, get my clothes out on a regular basis and pile them all up. Well, I say regular, you know, once every year or 2 years. Um, just to see, because you know life changes and your tastes change and your shape changes. My shape has changed so much, and you know, various things can happen in life that can make you reevaluate your stuff. But going through it that first time is a very eye-opening experience, but very, very satisfying once you go through it. And I think, like I said, I had decluttered a lot beforehand,
Mhm.
but after doing this method, getting like drastically better results. So this is the way that I have moved
Yeah.
forward.
Right. Before coming across her book, I was the person that would declutter every season, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
winter comes or fall,
Yes.
you get rid
Hmm.
of, the summer stuff, you're done with, like that. So I was like, I mean, I don't get it. You know,
Yes. Same.
I already do that. I know the things I
Hmm.
have. I'm organized. I'm also the person when I'm stressed out, I will go and organize stuff,
Yes.
and,
Same.
and
Yeah.
make it tidy and pretty. And it's so satisfactory for me. Like, oh my God, so exciting. So I thought, I don't get it. But I read the book, and the philosophy behind it was what really got me hooked. And once I did that, I piled all my stuff on my bed, all my clothes. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my goodness.
Yep.
Why do I still own a prom dress at 32? Like my kid's
Yep.
not going to wear my prom dress. She's going to be like, Mom, that's ugly. How did
Yep.
you? No, get this out of my face.
And we do. I was the same. Like I used to do. Like for me, it was New Year's. Coming up to New Year's, I was like, okay, clean
Yeah.
slate. You know, get rid of a lot of stuff. And just before, so I started KonMari Method in April of 2016, and was it 2016, 2015, 2015, I think. And I had just done like my New Year's big decluttering spree, and I thought, you know what, like this, I'm not going to be able to let go of anything else, or like only a handful of things. Yeah, no, no, it's
Right.
a whole different ball game. Like it's a new level of decluttering.
Yeah.
And I feel like if anyone's listening and they kind of feel like they have decluttered and they're still struggling with clutter and they're still struggling with stuff, read the book. Again, it
Yes.
may not resonate with you, but I think most people do find something that they can take away from it. But it's definitely next level decluttering if you do find that you have tried to clean and organize before and it, you know, things just end up back the way they were, I guess. I would definitely recommend giving this one a go. Yeah.
For sure. The telltale sign for me was I would, walk into my closet, getting ready to get ready, and
Mm.
I would have a hard time. Like, I have nothing to wear. But I know my
Yes.
closet is full. Why do I
Yes.
feel this way? So that was like the push. Like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try. I have nothing to lose because obviously the way I organize and declutter does not work.
Yes. And
So
same for me.
after that first experience, I remember just getting dressed so quickly and so easily. Like, okay, this
Yes.
is what I'm wearing. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Instead
And
of
you
just
know that you
staring at
love
my
it.
closet for 15 minutes. Like, what is happening?
Yeah. Or trying something on and it's just not quite working for you and taking it off
Yeah.
and putting it back in the closet again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I found the exact same thing. There is this wonderful thing. about the KonMari method and like the impact it's had on my life. Like it's not just stuff, it's
Mm-hmm.
not just physical stuff. That's how it starts. But the knock-on effect, like you said, getting dressed in the morning, getting ready, even so far as like planning out your days or your schedule, you start to realize, okay, this thing is not, making me feel good. This, activity does not spark joy for me. And it has this massive ripple effect. But even down to, yeah, just the mornings, getting dressed in the mornings, a much better experience. And for me, I was not then coming home to find piles of clothes scattered around my room that I had tried on that morning
Oh
and
my
discarded.
God, yes.
Yeah.
Brings back memories.
Yeah. So it just has such a huge, massive
Yeah.
ripple effect on other areas, and you don't even realize it
Mm-hmm.
until you declutter, like do a proper clear out of your
Right.
stuff. And then you start to notice the impact the clutter has had on your life. And it's again not a fun experience at the time, but it's wonderful to know that you have made this change and that, from then on, things are going to be better.
For sure. Another big one for me was cleaning. Before
Oh,
the
yes.
method, I remember I used to have to, devote a whole day to
Hmm.
cleaning. And it's not like
Yes.
we live in a huge house, this
Hmm.
is just a regular size apartment.
Yep.
Why do I have to spend 8 hours cleaning? Because of
Yes.
all the crap I had that
Yeah. And it's not like
was
you're,
everywhere.
yeah, you're cleaning extra stuff, and it's not just
Yeah.
cleaning it, but you have to move it out of the way to clean other things, and you're,
Hmm.
tripping over it. And yeah, it's a whole ordeal. But the less stuff you have, the less cleaning you have to do. And
Right.
that is, to me, that's like reason enough.
That's where I got sold. I was like, wait, what? I don't have to spend 8 hours cleaning? Okay, I'm giving this a try. And it,
Yeah.
it worked beautifully. It doesn't mean that now, which was another thing I had to figure out because I thought, okay, now my house is always going to be perfect.
Yeah.
No,
But it's
no.
no, it's much easier when you
Right.
have less stuff. It's easier to just very quickly put it back,
Now I
particularly
can
when,
manage it in a way where
yes.
I don't become this angry, resentful ogre that's
Oh
just
my
going like,
goodness.
why are you guys so messy?
That was 100% my life. 100%. And I think you don't realize, it's one of those things that you don't realize the impact that it's having. And once you clear away some clutter and you see then how easy it is to put things away and to store things, like you're never going to have like the perfect house because you live there. You're
Mhm.
going to be taking things out and using them and cooking meals and playing with your kids, or just reading and kicking back and relaxing, and you're going to have stuff out. But the difference is it's going to be much easier to put it back and to know where it goes. Everything will have its place, and everything that you have will be something that you love. So when you reach for something, you're not like digging through a pile of stuff to find the perfect thing. You're not like
Mhm.
rummaging in a cupboard to find the thing that you want. Everything should be more or less kind of easy to put your hands on and use and be accessible and available to you. And that is the difference. And it really does make a big difference.
Yeah, it creates a huge impact. I feel like it starts to allow you to create the life that you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. And it's,
Yeah.
that has such a huge impact. And certainly it did on my mental health as well, because I
Hmm.
think when you have a really nice space, or certainly, like a nicer space, your brain, it kind of sends a message to your brain that you deserve to have a nice space and you are worthy of this space. And that's something that I struggled with a lot after my daughter was born. The whole place was messy, and then that starts to form this kind of vicious cycle of you start to feel
Hmm.
like a messy person, and you start to kind of get down on yourself about it, I guess. And then when you start to tidy up, it gives you breathing space, and
Right.
it gives you like not just physical space but mental space too. It gives you a little bit of extra breathing room so that you can sit down and actually enjoy your space.
Hmm.
You can get the things done that you need to get done, quickly, efficiently. You can properly relax when it's time to relax, rather than looking around at a mess everywhere and piles everywhere.
Right.
Um, So once you clean up your space, it has this huge knock-on effect on your mental health. And you're telling yourself, I deserve this. I am worthy of this. And again, it's that whole idea of filling up your own cup. By giving yourself that nice space, you're telling yourself, I deserve this. I am a good person. I deserve a nice, clean, organized space. And that, filters out through the rest of your life, that you deserve good relationships, you deserve nice stuff, you deserve, a break, you deserve to rest. So it's really, I was surprised by how much physical stuff impacted the mental stuff and the emotional stuff. And that was probably the biggest surprise for me. I was not expecting that, or certainly not expecting it on the same level as I experienced it.
Yeah, that's definitely so true because I'm assuming it was the same for you, but I hadn't noticed how much my surroundings were having an impact on my life until I was home more. Until I left my
Mm.
career because it was well, I'm always working. It's of course I don't have time to pick that up. It's
Yeah.
okay. But then I'm home and that pile's still there. So what's my excuse? And it
Yeah.
just started to do these mind games of like, well, how come you can't do that? You know?
Yeah. And it's really hard to enjoy your life. It's really hard to, let's say, enjoy a hobby if your craft room or your crafting corner is, in chaos. Is really
Hmm.
hard to relax and unwind when you spend 8 hours cleaning. And it's just really hard to feel kind of calm and in control of your life. Um, when you've just spent, we'll say, like 20 minutes frantically searching for your keys, or you've spent longer than you anticipated trying to find an outfit to wear. It's really difficult to live the life that you want to live when you are surrounded by all of that clutter. And it doesn't take that much to tidy it up. And I think everyone will understand that experience of a freshly tidied space, like how good you feel, how satisfied you feel, and how you then feel that you deserve your break. And that it should never be the case that you feel like you have to earn a break. So
Right.
when you declutter your stuff, you feel like you've earned it all the time, I guess. It's when it's easier to clean up your stuff, you don't feel like you have to clean for 8 hours just to deserve, quote unquote, to put your feet up. That should never be the way it is. And again, by cleaning up your space, you're telling yourself that you deserved to rest and you deserve a nice space to relax and unwind in. And it's just very difficult to do that when you're surrounded by mess, because even if you want to sit down and relax, I feel very often there is this guilt, or there is this kind
Hmm.
of nagging voice that's telling us, I still need to like clean the dishes, or I still need to deal with the laundry. Like when you sit down and you see piles of stuff everywhere, even on a subconscious level, it's
Yeah.
telling you that there's something else to do and you should not be sitting down and relaxing right now. And that's why so often we do sit down and relax, maybe spend a few hours watching TV or scrolling on our phone or reading or something, and you don't feel relaxed at all at
Hmm.
the end of it. Like that's why, because you don't feel like you have properly rested.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. And now that you brought up guilt, how
Mm.
did you deal with that initial guilt and shock of having way too much, realizing that you had too much?
I think what helped me was kind of realizing that I couldn't change the past. Like I
Hmm.
couldn't go back and make a different decision. And the decision that I made back then was the right decision for me at the time with the information that I had, which was, more is better. And I enjoyed shopping and I enjoyed spending money. And, I did the best I could at the time. It was an enjoyable experience for me and it did teach me something, and I did get something out of it, whatever that was at the time, whether it was like a momentary high, like a shopper's high, or whether it was, buying something that kind of did have a big positive impact on my life. So I focused on that, that I couldn't go back and make a different decision. And that now that I am kind of older and hopefully a little bit wiser, that I'm just making different decisions
Mm-hmm.
now based on the life experience that I have accumulated, based on my current lifestyle. Back then it was great to buy new things and buy new outfits and buy all this stationery because I was young and I was experimenting with things and trying out new things and new hobbies and, embarking on a new career. And it was the right decision at the time. So that is what helped me, that it was in the past, it was the right decision at the time. Even if I don't feel right now that it would be the right decision for me to
Mm-hmm.
make, it's just that I'm in a different phase of life and I have this experience now and I want to make different decisions. So I try never to think of it in terms of making a better decision. It's just a different decision based on my current wants and needs and the kind of place that I'm in right now and the place that I want to be in the
Mm-hmm.
next phase of my life.
Did you ever have that experience at the beginning or at any point where you were going through the motions and getting rid of stuff? And did anyone ever say to you, but or make you question, you're really gonna get rid of that? But I gifted you that, or this still has so much life left in it.
The What helped me is not telling anybody, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would do is when I put things in a box or in a bag, I would immediately close it up. Tie up the bag, close over the box so that nobody can see that stuff. Yes, you will still get some comments, but for me, I realized I'm living my life. That person is not living my life. And, they have good intentions and that's totally fine. And they can have their own opinion, but only I know what is best for my life. And I think that, after going through postpartum depression, with my daughter and coming out the other side of it, I realized that decluttering stuff was giving me back my mental health and it was
Mm-hmm.
giving me hope for my future. And that is what kind of kept me going, knowing that I was doing this for myself and that I was doing it for my health and my well-being. And just because something works for somebody else does not necessarily mean it's going to work for me. And again, just trusting that the decisions that I were making were the best ones that I could make in the moment. Um, but it can be difficult, but I would say like try and keep other people out of it as much as possible. Like this is a very personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do live with people and you think that they like never declutter someone else's stuff for a start, but as you're going through your own stuff, if you think somebody will jump in and say, oh, you're getting rid of that, like tie up those bags, close over those boxes and just get the stuff out as quickly as possible.
Right.
If it's your stuff and you have like full domain over it and you get to say whether it stays or it goes,
Mm-hmm.
just be resolute in that and knowing that you're doing the best that you can do for you.
Right. Yeah, that's another question I had. How would you advise someone to go about that's getting ready to do this, but they live with someone else that's not there yet?
First of all, let me say I'm in that situation. I have been decluttering like hardcore decluttering, Marie
Mm-hmm.
Kondo decluttering for about 6.5 years now. And my husband is still not there yet. And I don't think he will ever be there, but still do it because you can make massive strides just with your own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have made massive strides just with my own stuff. Start with your own stuff, go through that. You will see a huge difference, even just like in your sock drawer or something like that. It makes a difference to your life. So still do it. You will still be surprised by how much you get rid of. Sometimes that will have an impact on the other person. In my case, it didn't. but, um, and you can slowly kind of move on to more communal stuff, like the stuff that's a little bit more neutral, maybe like
Right.
dishes in your kitchen or something like that. But never underestimate how much you can achieve just on your own. I would say kind of if you are sharing a space and you do get to a point where you are kind of dealing with joint items, like after you've taken care of all of your own stuff, maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at, lots of mugs or something in your kitchen or lots of glasses. What really helped me was instead of having my husband there, because I knew that he would not want to let go of anything, I just snapped pictures of things and I sent them to him.
Oh,
And it
that's
really helped
smart.
because, yeah, that was a game changer for me because it meant that he was kind of emotionally detached and
Right.
physically detached from the environment. It was much easier for him to say, yes, okay, we can let go of those 3 extra glasses or whatever. Because he's not there in the moment, because I have done the hard work. Like, he doesn't have to have any involvement in it. And it saved a lot of arguments as well.
Wow.
It kept things very like professional, I guess, very
Mm-hmm.
civil. I would just text him a picture and I'd say, hey, these are some things that I think we might be able to live without. These are some things that I want to donate or whatever. And it was very easy for him to just text back a yes or a no. And that is what I always recommend. If you're really
That's
struggling with someone,
genius. That's,
text them, because
yeah,
they're emotionally removed from the situation. When you're there
right.
holding something
And
and
they're
you're in
not
the thick of it,
overwhelmed. I can
yes.
imagine, by all these things that you're throwing at them. What about this and what about that? Uh,
Yes, exactly.
that
And like I
is,
said, you've done all the hard work. They
yeah,
don't have to do anything except kind of just say yes. It's much easier for them to say, yeah,
right.
okay, we can let go of that pile of stuff, when they haven't had to do the work, like, to get there, and they're not going to have to do the work of actually getting rid of it or selling
Mm-hmm.
it or donating it or whatever is required next. So that was what really helped me. But do start with your own stuff first. I mean, your own clothes, your own books, your own shoes, etc. That will make a big, big difference. And then when you
Right.
do move on to the kind of communal or the joint stuff, texting, texting is the way to go.
And I guess being patient, right? It took you X amount of time to get here.
Yes.
Then, maybe it'll take that person a little more or a
Yeah.
lot more, but
Yeah. I
it's
often think about
okay.
it in terms of, like, decluttering it can be a big kind of life-changing thing, particularly if you want to kind of overhaul everything, if you want to go through your entire home. And I often think of it in terms of, what if my husband turned around to me one day and said, let's run a marathon? And he can give me all of the excuses and all of the reasons, like, why running a marathon is a really great idea, and I can understand that on a logical,
Mm-hmm.
rational level. It's healthy training, etc. Your diet has to improve, but I would just not be ready for that.
Mm-mm.
And
My
I
palms are
probably would
sweating
never.
just thinking about that. Mm-mm. No.
No, marathons are not for me.
No.
Like, no. So that's how I often think about it. It can be a big life change. And I try and see it from the other point of view. If someone did turn around to me and say, hey, let's do this big life altering thing, even if you can give lots of reasons why it's a great thing to do, that doesn't mean that everyone is necessarily ready to do it or in that place, where they will do it. But I will say that even if they're not in a place where they're ready to declutter, even if they're never in that place, they can still help on your decluttering journey in so many ways. Like, my husband looked after our daughter while I was decluttering. He,
Right.
would cook or, take care of something else. So, or maybe like help me move some furniture or lift some boxes, or he did some runs to the charity shop a few times as well. So just because they're not involved in the decluttering itself does not mean that they can't still help and support you in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, everyone's on their own different journey. Some people will never be ready to declutter their stuff. Some people will never be ready to run a marathon. But that doesn't mean that they can't still support you in your journey if that's something that you want to do.
Yes, Laura, that's deep. That's that's so true. Yeah, and I hope whoever's in that situation, takes your advice because it's the only thing you can do. It's
Yeah, listen,
just
I've learned through years of bitter experience. So yeah, but I've learned a few tricks along the way, but I often think of the marathon example, that it's just not something that's for me. And you can sell me all the health benefits,
Mhm.
but it's just never going to be something that I want to do.
Right.
So, yeah, well, I mean, never say never, but I just cannot foresee that ever happening for
Yeah,
me.
I'm not that
So
mature. I have some growing up to do before I
I don't, I
I
don't, it's just too much. Like, I like challenging myself, but
Not in
Running
that
is not
way.
my thing. No.
No,
I
no.
mean, walking, if you want to go walk for an hour, great, okay. But losing toenails by running 26 miles, no.
Feeling like I'm
No,
gonna die any minute? No.
yes, I draw the line
No,
there.
thank
So
you.
I will happily join you on a stroll around the neighborhood.
Yes, right?
Yeah. So I think you just, I give them some grace and just realize that they may not be, no matter how many benefits there are to decluttering, some people are just not, that's not the journey they're on. They're on
Mm-hmm.
a journey that has other benefits for them.
Right.
But the texting thing can really, really help. And like I said, just asking them to help or support in other ways, like moving a heavy box or, taking the kids out to the park while you tackle
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, so there are other ways. Think about it in other ways. But yeah, those are all lessons that I've learned over the years.
Have you started to get your daughter involved in decluttering?
Yes. Yeah. I will often say to her, is there something that you would like to donate? I keep donation boxes around the house.
Mm-hmm.
She is aware of where they are, and she knows that if she comes across something that she doesn't want anymore, she can just pop it in the box. And she does frequently. And I've explained to her, why we donate. That there are other boys and girls who don't have many
Yeah.
or any toys. And this is just a way of us sharing. And because the reality is we're in a very privileged position. And I want her to understand that not everyone has that. And it is our duty and our responsibility to help others out. And that is one way that we do it. And I try and kind of take her with me if I'm doing anything like that. Sometimes I don't bring her to the charity shop because she'll just want to buy more stuff. But I explain to her, what I'm doing. If we're donating to like a local pantry or something like that, a community pantry, I bring her with me. Um, and yeah, I try and talk her through the process. Even if we're out shopping or something, sometimes I will say, "Oh, look at that, that's nice." And she will immediately say, "Let's buy it." And I use that then as a learning opportunity to say, you know what, it is nice and I do like it, but I don't need it. I'm choosing to leave this here because I'm trying to create a nice home for myself. And I think somebody else would love this more. And it would be selfish of me to take it when it's not something that I truly, truly love. So that's something that I've started. And then recently I've tried to kind of get her into this idea that we deserve a nice home and we deserve a nice space. When I'm tidying up or cleaning or decluttering, I tell her I'm doing it because I deserve a nice space. And I'm trying to get her into that mindset of, the cleaning isn't a chore. Cleaning shouldn't be a
Yes.
punishment. You clean because you deserve it. You deserve to live in a nice space.
Mm-hmm.
So she's getting there. My husband, I think, is a lost cause, but I have some hope for my daughter.
Yes. I think that's so true because also grew up with that mindset of you clean because you have to, right? It's
Yeah.
it's your responsibility. And
Yes.
even though that's true to an extent, that's no way to live. I mean, you clean because like you said, you deserve a nice space to come into
Yeah.
and feel happy and being able to breathe and go, "Okay, I'm home." Not, "Oh
Yeah.
crap. Look at all this
Yes.
shit. I'm home."
Yeah, you deserve to come home and have a space that you can unwind in, even if you
Yeah.
do have to spend a little bit of time cleaning first. And I try not to think of it as cleaning. I try to think of it as creating my ideal space.
Yeah.
And that kind of, again, it's more of a mind shift thing that helps me reframe it. And with my daughter, now I don't always succeed with this, I will say, but I try never to use cleaning as a punishment.
Mhm.
It's so easy to say, like, go clean your room, like, look at this mess. Um,
Oof. Yeah.
I, I've I,
Guilty.
I've done it and I continue to do it, but I'm trying really hard to get out of that
Yeah.
habit. And again, like I said, trying now to rephrase it in the way that it's we deserve a nice home and we deserve to be, respectful of our stuff. And we're very fortunate that we have this
Right.
stuff and we should look after it. And that is our responsibility. And yeah, again, it's just something that we are worthy of.
Has she ever donated something and then regretted it? really badly? How did you deal with that?
Um, she hasn't. I don't think.
Oh,
Nothing that
wow.
comes to mind. She, like, I never force her to donate something,
Mm-hmm.
which I think definitely helps. There are some things that she will donate that I will want to keep, for sentimental reasons. So I always go through her stuff afterwards and I will take something out and set it aside. When she was younger, before I involved her in the process, I used to kind of set some things aside if I wasn't sure about them, and I leave them there for a few months, and then revisit, if she hadn't
Mm-hmm.
asked for them or anything. But I don't think there's been anything she has regretted. I know that I have donated things that I've regretted, but I don't think for her she's done that yet. She, like I said, I don't force her to donate anything. So I think when she makes a decision that she wants to donate something, she's very certain in her decision.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, not yet. You're making me worried that it might
Oh
happen now.
no, maybe no, maybe she really has it down. It has happened to us twice where
Oh, really? With your
yeah,
kids?
with my
Oh,
kids, but especially I think it was with the younger one, so I think she was caught up in the high of like put this in the bag and put that in the bag.
and not truly understanding.
Yes, and then a couple
Yeah.
months go by and she's like, "You made me give away my
Mm,
unicorn.
yeah.
Where is it?"
I know, like when she was very young, she was probably maybe 2 or 3. She did come to me with some stuff that she wanted to donate, and I knew, I kind of had an inkling that she was too young to
Mm-hmm.
understand. So I sat her down and I said, when we donate these things, we cannot get them back. For her, it was kind of like I can, loan things to a friend, when she shares
Right.
toys with her friends. So I did have that conversation with her very early on, that when this stuff is gone, it is gone and it's not coming back. So I don't know if maybe that helped. But yeah, nothing so far, I don't think, that has stood out. But maybe it was that conversation that I had with her, making her
Yeah.
understand that once it's gone, it's gone. Like that's
That's
that's it.
awesome. And it's so satisfying to see them say on their own, you know what, this,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think this serves me anymore. Well, she doesn't use that phrase. She'll say things like, I don't think this is good for me anymore. I want someone else to have it, is what she'll
Yeah.
say. And
My
then
daughter
she'll
will
go
say,
and put
that
it
she
in the
wants,
bag
yeah.
because we don't do the box, we do a bag. She'll put it in the bag and she'll tell me, you can take this to the donation place.
Yeah, my daughter's the same. She'll say, like, I want someone else to have this. I want another boy or girl to have this.
Yeah.
So we keep a box in her room, and then we have another box in a closet out in the hallway, and then there's one downstairs. So it's very easy for her to access a box whenever she wants it. And I think that really helps as well, because when kids have very easy access, when it's very easy for them to just throw something into a box, like anything you can do to remove friction from
Mm-hmm.
the process, I think is definitely worth it. And I know it helps me as well, because there have often been times like previously where I've had something and I've thought, oh, I should probably donate that. But then I don't have like something readily available. So I kind of set it aside,
Right.
but then it just ends up piling up again. I put other things on top of it, and then a month goes by and I can't remember that I had, specifically set that aside to donate it. So having those boxes where I can immediately put something in really, really helps. But yeah, kids are a whole different ball game. I never involved her when she was younger, and I again used to get comments on my videos like, how could you do this? And I'm like, she's two.
What?
I'm the mother here. So yeah, I
But
think
I
it's a
think
very
it's
much a,
such a life skill that you're passing on. You know what I mean?
I hope so. Well, I'm,
Because
I'm definitely not teaching her baking or cooking or crafting. So
she'll
if
figure that out. Don't worry.
donating and decluttering might be my legacy, and I'm okay with that.
I listen, I wish I would have learned these things when I was a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that takes us to the next set of questions that I had for you, and our culture comes into play because I come from a
Mm,
culture. I was born in Cuba, so I come from a culture where you really take care of the things that you have, and there's
yes.
no such thing as having too much. That
Ah,
doesn't happen. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yep.
You reuse and recycle everything.
Yes.
So
Yep.
to go from that to, hold on, I have way too much and I need
Hmm.
to let go and, curate my surroundings. What's a
Yes,
big like mind shift that I had
it
to
is.
really work on?
Yeah, and I think, like I said earlier, it is for all of us because a lot of us were brought up with the mentality that you had to hold on to your stuff and that it was kind of a sense of accomplishment and
Mm-hmm.
success, like the more stuff you had. I mean, I grew up in 80s Ireland. Nobody had anything. Everybody was poor. There was like massive unemployment. So what you had, you made it last. And then as soon as I grew up and started to earn my own money and, things were getting back on track with the economy and everything, I started to spend. It was a whole new world to me to have my own money. And I started earning probably before I was mature enough to know what to do with that money. So I started working when I was 15. Getting a paycheck when you're 15, like, what are you spending it on? You're not spending
Cool
it on,
stuff.
yeah, you're not spending it on lifelong investments or
Right.
anything like that. So that's probably, it took me a long, long time to reconcile that kind of whole idea of as soon as I have money, I spend it because I've never had money before. And this is a whole
Mm-hmm.
new world to me. And I don't have to, live in secondhand stuff or, deal with ratty things that really have outlived their purpose. And I really went a little bit overboard with it. And I think a lot of us do. And it took me a long time to really kind of come full circle and come back to that idea of no, when you have something, you take care of it and you look after it. Um, I think, like I said, I grew up in Ireland and it's strange now because living in the US, I can see the differences. And in Ireland, because we're such a small island, space is at a premium. Like houses are small, you don't have a lot of land. Like we do have storage units, but not nearly on the same level. Um, so we have smaller homes, like our roads are smaller, we've smaller cars. And because we are an island, we import a lot of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which means there are higher prices on things, extra taxes and import fees and things. And often you would have a longer wait time. If you ordered something online, it's not going to get to you like, within a few hours. You may have to wait a few days, a few weeks,
You
maybe.
mean you have to wait? What?
Waiting. So that was a big eye opener over here. So I think, lack of space and higher prices for things means that maybe in Ireland we're not as, we can't always afford to be as fanciful, and we don't always have the space to be as cluttered. But like no matter what size of a space you have, I think we've all dealt with a clutter issue, even if you live in a small home. Like a small
Mm-hmm.
home doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a small amount of stuff. And a big home doesn't necessarily mean that you have lots of storage and therefore you will never suffer with clutter either. I think it's like a handbag, like
Yeah, that's
regardless of
true.
what size bag you have, you fit everything into it. Um, so yeah, it's really unusual, but I think things are becoming much more readily available. Prices are going down all the time. Things are so cheap, and it's just like I said, advertisers are selling us this idea that more is more. More
Mm-hmm.
is better, and if we want to succeed in life, we have to have these things. If we want to be seen as successful, we have to have these things, and we have to keep
Right.
climbing that ladder. And it's very difficult to get yourself out of that when you're being bombarded by those
Mm-hmm.
messages on a regular basis. But it's definitely possible, and the benefits of it are like so far beyond what you could imagine unless you're as far down the line, I guess, as I am. But even where I am on my journey, like I said, 6.5 years into it, I'm still learning things. Like I'm still discovering new benefits. So it's like a world that is constantly unfolding to me, but I don't feel that pressure anymore to climb any sort of a ladder. I'm living my own life. I'm very happy in my life. Still want to do things and still kind of striving for um, a better quality of life or, better
Right.
health, etc. all the time, but not necessarily doing it because I'm trying to keep up with someone else.
And that in itself is a huge accomplishment.
It's,
It's
it's,
tough.
it's tough. Yeah. It feels like a struggle all the time.
Yeah, it's
But
tough to finally say, okay, I'm doing this for me under my terms, and
yes.
constantly reject what you're being told, you know?
Yeah. And
Saying no to
it's,
those Target sales.
yeah. And it becomes easier over time.
Yeah.
You develop all your different ways of doing it. Like I don't go to Target unless I really have to. And I don't shop unless I'm going for something specific. When I was younger, that used to be a hobby, like strolling
Hmm.
around the shops on the weekends would be a thing, but you would inevitably come home with something.
Yeah,
And now I realize, if I don't go to the shop, I don't buy something.
exactly.
So it's learning all of those different strategies, and not just, sometimes I hear from people and they think, I love to shop. Like, what would I do if I don't have that? Like, that's my way to unwind and relax. And I definitely understand that. And I think it comes down to just finding different ways
Hmm.
to get the same result. You can still meet up with friends and go out for lunch or brunch or something. You can go, on a little bit of an adventure. You can explore somewhere new. You can go to like a gallery or a museum if that's your thing. Go to the theater. You
Right.
just need to find kind of different activities that will give you the same sense
Hmm.
of, getting out of the house and exploring and seeing new things without necessarily having to bring something home with you. But you learn all of these like strategies and tips and things along the way. And I think sometimes you don't even realize that you've done it until you're looking back, which has often been the case with me.
Yeah, because hindsight is always 2020, right?
Oh yeah.
It's yeah, it's so much easier once you got through and you broke through that wall to look back and say, "Oh, okay, that's how it happened."
Yeah, that's what worked and that's what didn't work.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm, like I said, continuing to learn. And that's why I started the blog, really, because, like I said, I was learning some stuff along the way that I thought would be helpful to someone else. And I was hoping that someone else would help me out too. And it could become this like interchange of ideas. And it's been really interesting to see how that's grown over the years. And sometimes there are certain situations where my advice has changed, and it's interesting to see that kind of evolution of myself and
Hmm.
my ideas and the way I am living. It's weird and wonderful to
Yeah.
see that evolve over time.
That's so interesting. I mean, you definitely helped me a lot.
Oh, that's great. And
Yeah.
I try and keep it really practical. That's another thing for me, looking online and finding things that are just not relatable to
Hmm.
new mothers or to somebody who's really struggling with stuff and maybe doesn't have a huge budget or doesn't, isn't an interior designer, which I'm
Right.
not. Um, Really trying to keep it very, very practical, very realistic, and to give actionable steps. And I think that's probably why How to Get Your Shit Together ended up taking off the way it did, because it was, um, it really was focused on more of that practical side. And I think there's definitely a need for more kind of inspirational, aspirational content. And
Hmm.
I definitely turn to that. There's a time and a place for that. But for me, for the stage of life that I was in when I started it, and still the stage of life I'm in, I'm more about the practicality. And maybe that's just something like comes with getting older. You
No,
turn more to the
yeah.
practicality then.
For sure. I know that's what made all the difference for me when I stumbled across your content was how digestible you made everything. Because I knew, I read the book, I knew I wanted to do it, but then you're stumped because you have this entire mountain that you have to cross and
Yes.
you don't know how to get started and it just becomes you don't want it to become so overwhelming that you quit. That was my
Yes.
fear. I did not want to quit. So I
Yeah. And
feel like you gave me ways and little goals and strategies that made it possible, I was
oh, I love
yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
always say that like you can build on small successes and still, have a big result, but it's really hard to bounce back from a failure, even if it's a small failure. So I always recommend that people start very, very small and build, like you can still declutter an entire room going drawer by drawer and just getting one drawer done
Right.
before you move on to the next one. Whereas if you pull everything out, and I'm sure we've all been in that
You're going
situation,
to cry.
Yeah, you get a big burst of motivation. And I think it's very easy to,
Yeah.
read a book like Marie Kondo's book or any other decluttering book and to be filled with a sense of motivation and yes, I'm going to do this and tear everything out of all the cupboards and pull them down off the bookcases and then just exhaust yourself and overwhelm yourself. So I always say to start really small, just do that one shelf, on your
Hmm.
bookcase, or even just choose 5 books and go through those. And then you can keep going and still get the entire space done. But
Right.
instead of pulling it all out, sometimes you need the all or nothing approach. And I think everyone is different in that sense. And it just depends on how much time you have available to you, how much energy you have available to you, how kind of disciplined a person you are. Um, but I do think that if you're in doubt at all, it's better to start small and build on that success. Because even the smallest failure can be a big setback when you're facing into something
Hmm.
like this.
Because it is
For
life changing. It's a big deal.
It really is. And
Yeah.
like I said, there's knock-on effects on the rest of your life. And the reality is, we're all busy people. We have jobs, we have homes to look after, we have maybe kids, we have a family, friends, social life. We have a lot of other stuff going on. And it's important to be cognizant of that you cannot completely overhaul your life
Hmm.
overnight. You didn't get to this stage overnight. So you're not going to, change it overnight. But yeah, I do things like my 30-day decluttering challenge that I did last year. And that was to give people a tiny space that they could declutter every day for 30 days. And it didn't have to be 30 consecutive days, but like set a timer for 5 minutes and just tackle one space. And I started, and I always recommend people start if they don't know where to start, with your nightstand, like your bedside table, because it's one of the first things you see when you wake up in the morning, and it's one of the last things you see at night. And when
That's
that's
true.
clear and that's organized, it gives you that peace of mind. I think you just sleep a little better. And when you wake up in the morning, like I said, you're not immediately facing into a pile of stuff. So that's the tiny little space that I always recommend that people start with. It's one of those really satisfying things that you get to see the results of. It's all well and good sometimes clearing out a closet or something in a cupboard. But when you're not seeing that every day, and I know we always go and take a little peek, like if you've done
Yeah.
something, you go and open that drawer. But when you can actually physically see it, like your nightstand, it's something that you see probably at least twice a day, if not more. It gives you that little bit of a boost and that confidence. And sometimes it can be about confidence, that confidence to continue and to think, you know what, I can do this. I start with this one little space and I just let it ripple out
Yeah.
from there.
That's such a good point. Now that you brought up books,
Yeah.
have you ever had a category that you just couldn't tackle? Because I know that's it for me. The one time I tried to declutter my books, I still regret it. There's one book out there that someone has that has all my annotations, all my stuff, and I still
Oh,
regret letting go of that darn book.
but somebody else was blessed with all of your notes and all of your annotations
I
and
hope.
stuff.
I
I
hope.
think when that's a wonderful thing about being a book lover. If you go to a secondhand bookstore and you find a book and you know that somebody else has loved it. I was in the library once and I borrowed a book, and when I got home, somebody else had written notes just on post-its, not on the
Hmm.
actual book, and they had left little post-its throughout the book. And I thought it was so wonderful because to me, it meant that there was somebody out there who thought the same way that I did and enjoyed the same things that I did. And to me, it was like I had found a friend, almost like an anonymous friend. So I think with your book, like there is a friend out there who has found your book and who has really appreciated the notes that you have left and, the things that you've written. And they have connected with you on a level that you will probably never understand, and you'll probably never meet that person, or maybe you will by some happenstance, but there's somebody out there who has benefited from that and who feels like they can connect with somebody in some kind of meaningful but odd way. But that's what the library book did for me, finding someone else's notes in a book really helped me feel connected to somebody and know that there was somebody in my community who shared the same likes and thoughts and ideas and the same interests. So I
Oh
hope
my
that
God,
helps.
Laura, yes, I feel like I should be paying you for therapy. I never thought of it that way. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
I
You're
do
right.
think that, like I said, I've been on the receiving end of that experience, and it's wonderful. It's just nice to know that there's somebody out there who shares that same energy. So yeah, I really hope that helps. But look, I think for me, like I have got rid of stuff that I have kind of had pangs of regret about. But I think, if I kept it, what would I have done with it?
Hmm.
Um, like the first outfit that my daughter ever wore, I decluttered that. And I sometimes have like little twinges about it. But then I think, if I kept it, what would I have done with it? I would have put it in a box, stored it in the basement,
Yeah.
um, probably never looked at it again, or, only pulled it out every few years to have a look at it. How would it really be serving me? I have photographs of her. I have the daughter herself. um, so yeah, I wonder, sometimes it's kind of a rose tinted glasses situation. You think, oh, if only I had kept that thing, my
Hmm.
life would somehow be magically different. But there was a reason you let go of that thing at the time. And it's easy to be kind of romantic about it or be nostalgic about it.
Yes.
Whereas the reality is you did let go of it for a reason. And if you had kept it, you probably would continue to not use it. Even if you think, oh, I
Hmm.
definitely would have used that in this situation, you probably got rid of it because you weren't using it. But I think your book is actually a wonderful story because I love that idea of,
Yeah.
there's somebody out there. Is it Serendipity? That's the movie
I think
where she
so.
writes the note in the
Hmm.
book. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like you've sent a message out into the universe and somebody has received that message and is now, like there's a book lover out there who loves that, who's really like cherished that.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was a kid, I found like a comic I read. It was a secondhand comic, like one of these annuals, like a hardback,
Hmm.
um, that my mother had bought for me. And in it, I found a letter that was written to the person and it was tucked away. And it just made it that more special to me to get a glimpse into someone else's life. She was another little girl and, somebody had written her a letter and it just like it takes kind of an ordinary everyday thing and really elevates it beyond that. And it gives it so much more meaning. And I think that's what you've done for someone else. Like they've picked up your book
I
and
hope
all of us,
so. Now
it's
I'm
not
gonna
just a book
start. Now
anymore.
you're making me want to just like release all these books to the wild.
It's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
Somebody else has benefited from that. And if you had kept it, maybe you'd kept it on a shelf and never looked at it again. And you would never
Right.
appreciate it the
Hmm.
way that someone else has appreciated when they opened that book and they thought, wow, somebody has really taken care to read this book and,
Right.
empty their thoughts onto the page. No, I think that's wonderful. I
And
really like that story.
you're making me realize something when you said like you probably wouldn't look at it. I probably wouldn't because it was one of the books that I used, when I was in the classroom.
Mm,
So I'm probably missing that book because of the nostalgia of that point in my life.
yes.
But
But you
I'm
still
not
have the
going to go
memory.
back to that point in my life.
Yep. That's it. I keep telling people like
Okay,
memories are
I
not
really
in
need to send
things.
you a check for therapy now.
I will send you an invoice.
Yes.
But yeah, I think you can never know the impact that your stuff is going to have, not just on your life, but on someone else's life. And memories are just not in things.
Hmm.
And that was something that I came to realize as well. Like your memories are in your heart and in your head. And getting rid of something, like a thing, does not mean that you're erasing that part of your life. It doesn't mean that you're getting rid of your memories. Sometimes you can just like snap a picture of something.
Yes.
Sometimes you go through your old stuff and something like jogs a memory for you and you think, oh yeah, I got this when I was with that person or, at that time in my life. And then you keep the item because it reminds you of that thing. Whereas very often what I recommend people do is snap a picture of it or journal about it. Just
Hmm.
write the story of the thing so that you still keep the memory of that thing alive without necessarily needing to keep the thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is about the thing, though. I mean, sometimes the thing itself is really important. Um, But I
Right.
think, yeah, for you probably with your book, it was more about it reminded you of that time.
Yeah.
Um, and I have things like that as well, like reminds you of, your carefree days, your
Yeah,
fun,
that
some
that
fancy free
part of
and
your life, that person that you
yeah,
were in that moment that, you've let go of.
yeah. But you were still
So,
that person, that
yeah.
nothing can ever take that away from you, and getting rid of a book does not take that away from you. So I think it's more, sometimes we can become very sentimentally attached to things because we imbue all our memories into it, and we think that they will go and they will disappear if they get rid of the thing. But more often than not, that is not actually the case. So yeah, I think if you think, what would I really do with this thing if I did keep it? Would it just end up in a memory box somewhere? Would it just end up sitting on a shelf
Yeah.
somewhere collecting dust? Um, yeah, it can help. It can help.
Thank you. That definitely was a lot more than I thought we we had planned for today.
I said, I'll
That
send
was
an
very
invite.
productive. um, do you think having too much is a Western problem?
Mm, I would hesitate to say that because I
Mhm.
personally am not familiar with Eastern culture, or I've never, really delved into that. I've no, I can't speak from a kind of authoritative point of view on that. I
Right.
definitely think it is um, becoming more and more prevalent to buy more stuff all throughout the world. I think, as I said, there's kind of a difference in Ireland because we're a smaller island and we
Hmm.
have smaller spaces. But I've definitely noticed over the past few years that it is becoming um, like more and more common to buy more stuff. And I think that's probably spreading throughout the world. Um, Advertisers are getting smarter and they're using psychological tactics now to really entice us to buy stuff. Whereas years ago, it was just kind of like, look at this fancy thing with all these gadgets and these like whirring things and
Right.
blinking lights. And, it was all about the kind of razzle dazzle. I think now advertisers are getting a lot more clever, sneaky, maybe, about it. And they know that there is a huge psychological aspect to owning stuff. And like I said, it's geared towards that wanting to appear successful and wanting to appear that you are moving forward in your life. Because if you're not doing that, if you're not accumulating, if you're not getting more money, it must mean that you're a failure or
Hmm.
that you're not successful. And I think they're really latching on to that. And sometimes it can be very unpleasant. And I think once you understand that, you start to notice it in advertising that you're not being sold a product, you're being sold a way of life, and not even in a positive way. You're being sold the idea that if you do not have this thing, you will not have friends, you will not be successful, you will not be admired and respected. Um, and it's hard to see it. And, it's hard to see the impact that it has on my daughter, for example,
Hmm.
knowing that she will fall for a lot of that and knowing that I fall for a lot of that. It's hard and it becomes, I think, more difficult to accept when you see it from that more negative point of view, that these people are not doing this in your best interest. They're not
Right.
selling you this thing because they want you to succeed. They are selling you this thing because they want to make money, and they will do it at not any cost, but at the cost maybe of your mental health and the cost of you feeling satisfied
Hmm.
and content with where you are in your life. I think we all fall victim to it, and I'm not, suggesting that I'm above that at all, not at all. Um, but you do over time start to realize how sneaky it is and
Hmm.
how negative it can be in certain situations. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think recognizing, like you said, you are going to fall victim to it, but being aware makes such a
Yes.
difference.
Yeah, and switching
Um,
off from it as much as you can,
yeah.
skipping advertisements, or, and they're everywhere. They're just everywhere, and it's
Hmm.
really difficult. Like, I think it's probably impossible if you, engage in the modern world at all in any sense. I think it's pretty much impossible to avoid some form of advertising at multiple points throughout your day because it is so prevalent nowadays. And, you would need to be superhuman
Yeah. And
to,
now the fact that it's tailored to you, right?
Yes,
If
everything is very tailored. And like I said, there is this psychological aspect that goes into it, that it is creating emotions in you and thoughts in you on a very subconscious or unconscious level. You're not even aware of it. And, there's a lot of subliminal messaging and things, and they're really pulling on your heartstrings or telling a story that you don't even know is working on you in your brain, or it's making you want something that you never knew you wanted.
yeah.
So it's, we all operate on some sort of subconscious level. There are things that we do that we're not 100% sure of the reasons why we do them, but maybe it's out of habit, or, just the messaging that we were brought up with. So it's impossible to avoid all of that. And I think you just do your best to avoid advertisements as much as possible, because again, it's like temptation. It's very hard to resist temptation. So what you have to do
And
is
it's
avoid.
exhausting.
Yes, it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
So instead of tempting yourself by going to a store, by looking at more advertising, you try and remove the temptation, the access to the temptation as much as possible. Because once it's there in front of you, it's harder to resist that. And like I said, it may be working on you in ways that you don't even realize. So they work in, they know the strategies now, even down to things like, color theory, knowing that certain colors elicit
Yes.
certain feelings. And, most people are not aware of that on a conscious level. You don't look and you think, oh, that color really makes me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that goes into it. So I think if you can avoid it as much as you can, but understanding that in the modern world, that's pretty
It's
much impossible.
exactly. That's the perfect segue into social media. How do
Yeah.
you balance, because now it's your work in a sense is on
Yes.
social media. How do you
Yeah.
deal with all of that?
So one of the biggest things for me is I have all notifications switched off.
Oh, wow.
Switch them all off. Do not get notifications for anything unless it's a text message or a phone call. No social media notifications whatsoever, because I realize I don't need to know in the moment that I've been tagged in a photo, or I don't need to know in the moment that somebody has commented on something. So that's been the biggest thing. I've also removed most of the social media apps from my phone, except Instagram, because I still get value for me out of Instagram.
Hmm.
But if I want to look at something like Facebook or Twitter, I have to log into my laptop, and I can still do it, but it's just that kind of extra step for me.
It's a
So I try and,
deterrent.
yes, and I try and put as many steps in between me and checking something as I can. Um, I I also time block my day. So I have specific blocks that are for work, like for content creation, writing or recording videos or whatever. And then specific blocks that are for social media or that are for downtime. And it means that I can engage in those activities more mindfully. Like I have a
Hmm.
chosen time that I do it. That way I don't have to feel guilty about it. And I don't feel the constant need to check. I think if you try and deprive yourself, or if you don't have a set time when you're doing it, it's constantly playing on your brain, that you constantly want to check because you don't know when you're going to get
Right.
your next fix, kind of. Whereas I think and you don't have to like schedule it or anything, but if you know that at certain points throughout the day, you're going to allow yourself to check, that definitely makes it easier. I don't feel deprived then when I know that at a certain time, I can scroll through Instagram or whatever, guilt free.
That is
um,
such a good tip.
it really helps. And
Yeah.
it's the reason as well why I use timers while I'm working, because if I don't use a timer and I just kind of sit down to work, my brain is constantly wondering when the next break is, and I
Hmm.
can't really focus. Whereas if I have a timer set, my brain knows that a break is coming, that there is a definitive end point, and it's more likely then to get into the work mode because it can switch off, like what time is it, how many
Right.
minutes are left, or I know that it will beep when my time comes. So for me, having that outlet, like not thinking that I can completely deprive myself of it, or completely stay away from it, or trying to minimize it as much as I can, because it just creates that need.
Hmm.
um, and I'd end up checking it more then. So, and then like in terms of work, I use like third party apps and software so that I can reply to comments without having to go into each individual app itself. And that really helps. Like, I don't have to log into Facebook to be able to respond to comments, because once you log in and you see
Mm-hmm.
something, you fall down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
Particularly Twitter. I find Twitter, for me personally, it's just a cesspool. I really do not get on well with Twitter. So I avoid that as much as I possibly can. So again, yeah, just replying to comments from a separate app really, really helps me. But I curate my feed as much as I can. I'm really diligent about that, unfollowing, muting, whatever needs to
Mm-hmm.
happen, um, because I keep reminding myself that I have a huge amount of control over what I allow in front of my eyeballs,
Yeah.
and scrolling through and kind of being frustrated by things doesn't do anything. Like, if you're frustrated by something, unfollow. If that's
Mm-hmm.
a constant thing. And I know sometimes, somebody will just post something a little bit inflammatory and it's not normally what they would do or whatever. But really evaluate what you're seeing in your feed. And then the less you see in your feed, the less ads you're going to see, like the fewer ads that are going to pop up for you. So that's another benefit to that. But curation in every aspect of your life, choosing what you want to see and remembering that you have that choice. You do have that choice.
Right. Do you ever struggle with what to share or how much
Um,
to share?
I sometimes, but I feel like I always know in my gut,
Mm-hmm.
um, if I want to share something and it doesn't feel right to me, or I feel like I kind of just always know on a deep level. And sometimes I share something and I know that it will get negative comments. And I just don't really care.
Yeah.
And then the comments will flood in and I'm like, oh no, I care. But I think sometimes I just know whether something is too vulnerable or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I try not to share pictures of my daughter all that often.
Mm-hmm.
I think she wants to be on social media and she wants to have her own YouTube channel and everything. And I'm really holding out on that, because I understand how murky a world that can be.
Right.
Um, when I was a lawyer, and this is probably not something that people think about or want to think about, but when I was a lawyer, we had to spend some time working with the police and um, going through like their interrogation process, or
Mm-hmm.
how they question people and how they get information out of people. But one of the segments was about how images of children are manipulated, um, and
That's
it
so
just,
scary.
yeah, and even the most innocent, benign type of thing can be really twisted. I also worked in retail years ago, and we had one of those machines where you could just pop in an SD card and print out your own photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And one day there was somebody in there printing out photographs of kids. Not,
Yeah.
I won't, yeah, just
Yeah.
not photographs that should have been taken or printed or
Right.
anything like that. And I feel like I've just had kind of one or two,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully not personal experiences of it, but just have had an indirect
Yeah.
um, experience of what can be done. So I try not to share too much of her life. But I think sometimes you just kind of know, you get a little bit of an icky feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly I do. But you can never fully know the impact that your words are going to have. And I mean that in both a positive and a negative sense. I can say something that I think is completely innocent, and somebody will find a way to twist it, because for some people, that's just what they do all day long. And they will put words in your mouth, or they will take something out of context. And then other times you can, say something completely, that you wouldn't even think about, maybe like with your book story or something. And it
Right.
does have an impact on people, and it does help them, and it helps them see things in a new way. Um, so I try to share as much as I can. I never share anything personal, as in like where I live, or,
Mm-hmm.
where my daughter goes to school. Nothing that would be identifiable personally in terms of, where we live or where we might frequent. But other than that, I think I share most thoughts and ideas. Um, but I usually know myself, if I'm not 100% with something, I don't share it. If I just feel for some reason it's just there's something wrong about it or something off
Right.
about it, I don't. It's hard. It's hard to make that judgment call.
Yeah. But I think you're mastering it, because that's one of the things that I feel comfortable with about looking at your content and watching your videos, is that it feels very purposeful, and they have a purpose. They all fit the bigger picture, which is to help and help people down their decluttering journey. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see videos about your daughter's first play date or her birthday
Mhm.
party, which, I mean, for people that record those things, whatever makes you feel good. But
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just, as you with your backgrounds, the dangers, and I as a
Mm.
teacher certainly know and have seen things that are, not the happy ending. And
Yeah, it's hard. And I
yeah,
think it's very easy to, just be unaware of that sort of stuff.
yeah,
You know, I, it's just hard. You don't expect bad things to happen, or you don't expect,
hmm,
something to be taken out of context, or you don't expect for somebody to pick up on something. You don't expect bad people to be in the world, basically.
right,
You expect everyone to be decent and reasonable, and to take you kind of at face value, and to understand that you have good intentions. And unfortunately, that is not always the case. And that's a negative aspect of being online. But I think if you were to avoid everything that has some form of negative aspect, you'd never interact with anything. It's like everything, you have to balance, overall it has to be something that is adding something positive to your life. And that's why I completely deleted Twitter. It just overall was not adding, I enjoyed the kind of conversations, and I enjoyed learning little snippets and keeping up with different things. But I found that on balance, I never felt good after it. Or there would be one thing that would lead me down a very dark rabbit hole. One in particular, that I saw years ago, that I'm not even going to
yeah,
go into here. But I just saw like a very dark tweet, and then there were like responses to it, and like articles posted about it. And because I am like a highly sensitive person, I'm very emotionally attuned to that thing, and I can
hmm,
kind of take on the burdens and the feelings of others. And it really affected me, and continues to affect me to this day. And that was like 4 years ago.
wow,
Um, and from that moment, like, I'd had a love-hate relationship with Twitter up until that point, and I kind of would go through phases of deleting it and then kind of reinstalling it, and being fine again for a while. And from that moment, I have never engaged with it since, because it took such a toll on me that I couldn't do it. It just wasn't, the positives did not outweigh the negatives for me. So I had to make that conscious choice, and again, curate the media that I was
hmm,
consuming. And Twitter got the chop. Twitter
yeah.
got the chop.
I think that's such a healthy way of approaching social media. The way I think about it is uh, stepping onto social media is like stepping onto the street. You can encounter good people, bad people, and you're just open to whatever. So
Yeah.
if I can choose my avenue and my route, then
Yes.
that's, at least for me, that's the way to go about it.
I completely agree. And I think that's a wonderful analogy, that once you're out there, you can't 100% control what you can see, but you can control kind of the direction you
Mm-hmm.
go, and certain aspects of it, like what you focus on and what you give your
Yeah.
time and attention to. You can't stop yourself from seeing everything, but you can, you have some degree of control over the types of things that you see on a regular basis, and whether or not you are going to allow them to take over your life and your day. It's very easy for me to see something negative and to really let it take over my day. And it's something
Mm-hmm.
that I'm really learning to deal with. So I try and eliminate as much of that as possible from my life. And it's not really a burying your head in the sand mentality, as some people think it is. It's just protecting my mental health
Right.
and my peace. And
I
that
think it
is,
comes down to understanding who you are as a person and
yes,
being
and what your
honest
needs
with
are.
yourself.
Yeah.
If you know that some things affect you in a way that it's going to be detrimental, why allow it?
Yeah. And I'm just not at a place anymore where I am willing to let my mental health be affected for the sake of being informed.
Yeah, no.
That's just not, it's not for me anymore. My mental health takes priority, and because it's taken such a battering over the years, now I make it a priority, and I don't really care what I have to do to protect that. You know, as long as I am happy and my family are happy and healthy, that is the most important thing to me. And I don't care if I'm not, you know, up on all the breaking news or all
Yeah.
the drama or what's happening in the world, celebrity gossip.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't care, because it's not something that's serving me, and it's not something that makes me feel good. So that was another balance for me.
That's that's definitely the most sound way to go about it. I agree. Do you have any future plans you want to share with us?
Future plans. I mean, world domination. It's always, always part of the
I think
plan.
you're on your way.
I do have I do have big plans. I have plans to kind of take How to Get Your Shit Together a lot more global, and to reach an entire generation of young men and women who want to take more control over their lives and want to create their own future and curate their own future. I won't say more than that.
I love
But
that. That's so exciting.
there are plans definitely
Yes.
in place where it's going to be it's going to be How to Get Your Shit Together, but on a much bigger scale, where a lot more people will have access to it, and it will kind of hopefully change how people grow up and how they
Hmm.
live their lives. But that's that's so shush.
No, you shared more than enough. That's so I'm so excited for you. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
I'm excited too.
amazing.
Also terrified. But
Oh no, it's gonna be amazing.
I
It's
hope so. I hope so.
I mean, look at everything that you've been able to do up till now. So why would anything change? It's gonna just keep
Well,
getting better.
I mean, I've had so many plans that have just kind of fallen by the wayside over the years. And, you know, I'm kind of right now only one person, although I have a few more people, you know, like accountant and web designer. And
Right.
I'm starting to bring more people onto the team. But it's always really daunting. And I'm one of these people who has lots of ideas for things,
Hmm.
and just do not have the time or resources to
Are
execute
you
on
a
all of
big
those ideas.
dreamer? Is
Yes,
that
100%.
yes?
Yeah. I get,
I,
it's probably part of the perfectionist.
I think
Uh,
so. I think
mhm.
it's they go hand in hand because I'm the same way. I can dream up a whole world in 5 minutes, but don't
Yeah,
ask me how to
the
make it
perfect world.
happen.
Oh yeah, and
Because
that's where I'm at. But again, that whole like progress towards perfection is
hmm.
generally what keeps me on track. Like I know that that ideal vision that I have is not something that I can create overnight. It's not something that I can create alone. But instead of letting myself feel daunted and overwhelmed by that, and going into kind of that um, paralysis that comes with perfectionism, like you
Yeah.
either want to do it perfectly or you don't do it at all. I'm coming more around to the idea that I can work my way towards that perfectionism, that perfect state. So I'm getting more things done than I used to when it was kind of an all or nothing situation. But I don't know. Sometimes my plans are bigger than than what I can actually do. But I think it's still nice to dream and to have those plans, and to,
Yeah.
you know, maybe get a little bit closer to them. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm striving for.
Right.
But I mean,
My
will they
my
all come to fruition?
dad
No. But
my dad always would tell us something, and I'm trying to recall like the actual quote, but I'm gonna butcher it. But here I go. He used to say something like, "Aim for the moon just so you can hit the sky." If
yes,
that makes
yeah,
any sense.
yeah. I think it's like shoot for the stars and you might land on the moon,
Oh,
or
yeah, that maybe that was his version of, you know.
something like that. Yeah,
So
I'm familiar with the
yeah,
expression. And I do think that's the case, that you may not
right,
hit like your destination, but you will still get a lot closer to it. And there are still wonderful things to learn and
right.
see along the way. And just because you don't end up exactly where you wanted to end up, I think, you know, we probably all have had hopes and dreams in our lives that didn't work out the way we had planned. But at the same time, we may have ended up, you know, there may have been some kind of pleasantly
Hmm.
unexpected destination that we arrived at instead. You know, my life
Exactly.
certainly did not work out as I had planned. This was never part of, you know, I was going to be a lawyer, and that was, you know, I had my practice for 10 years almost, and that was my career, and that's the, you know, path that I had chosen, and the path that I saw myself on for the rest of my life. And then things took a turn, and I ended up in a completely different place. But I would not change that. I would never change that. So I think sometimes you just have to roll with the punches and allow yourself to end up wherever you end up, and keep kind of pushing for, something more, but understanding that if you realize at some point down the line that you are not heading in the same direction, or you're not getting there as quickly as you would like, or that you veered off track, it's fine. Just take stock, reevaluate. Is this new place nicer? Maybe you're heading for a better destination. But I know it's cliche, but it is about the journey. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it becomes cliche for a reason because
Yes,
there's
I agree.
truth to it. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. It's just one of those things that has been said so many times because there is
Right.
truth in it.
And
Yeah.
when you're in the thick of it, it's not something you want to hear. You're like,
No.
screw the journey. I just
Yeah. Yeah.
Where
It's
am I
like when
going?
somebody's annoyed and you tell them to calm down. It's like, it doesn't help anything. But I think if you
Exactly.
I try and see every stage of my life as the destination. Like,
Yeah.
this is the place I'm at today, kind of like a road trip where you have stop offs at every point along the way. And you might not have a specific destination, but like
Hmm.
every day you have a destination that you're stopping off and kind of exploring. And that's how I try and see it now, that it's not about some like overall, I'm not like rushing to try and get to this other place that's like way over there. I am every day at a new destination, and I'm stopping to explore and learn as much as I can, and kind of trying to figure out from there. Like it's a
Right.
roadmap that's kind of evolving as you go. You stop off somewhere for the night, and then you kind of look at the map and you think, okay, where will I go tomorrow?
Yeah,
And that's sometimes helpful for me. Not always, but sometimes.
definitely. Um, so you know that we are all about books here. Do
Yes.
you want to share your favorite book, favorite author? What are you reading right now?
Oh my God. I feel like asking someone what their favorite book is like asking someone who their
I
favorite
know.
child is. I am a huge, huge book lover. I I don't know if I have like one singular favorite book. I do love a good psychological thriller. I really
Really?
love Stephen King's Misery. Yeah, oh, I'm a big, yeah.
Okay, I feel like you and I need to we need to hang
Chat
out in
more.
real life because whenever I mention that genre, everyone looks at me like, "What's wrong with
Ah,
you?" There's so many
no.
bad things in the world. Why do you want to go to a book that has such bad things?
Well, if it's all resolved in the end, that's fine by me.
Exactly. And I'm like, because everything's just, it gets wrapped up and there's an end. And
Yeah, and there's something satisfying about it, and because
hmm
it's an escape from reality. Like, I don't want to know that stuff is happening in real life.
I
Um,
rather think that it gets contained in a book
yeah.
and someone's imagination.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So I think like Stephen King's Misery for me was a wonderful book and a wonderful film, if anyone's ever seen it. But I also love a good story about kind of the like the gentle nature of the soul, like the kind of enduring human spirit. So I really love Sebastian Barry's The Secret Scripture. My mother bought that for me a few years ago, and I absolutely loved it. And it came at a time where I was starting to, because I loved kids' books when I was
Hmm.
a kid, growing up and all the adventure and stuff. And then as I grew older into my kind of late teens and kind of literature was introduced, I started to lose my love of reading because all those books seemed very stuffy to me and I
Hmm.
couldn't get on board. So I kind of fell out of my love of reading for some of my adult life because I thought, if this is what grown up books are like,
Yeah.
I don't want any part of this. Like, where's the fun? Where is the,
Yeah.
unexpected? Or, so I read Secret Scripture, and that really, I just loved it. And I fell back in love with reading because
That's
of that book. So that
amazing.
was a big one for me. I think Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. That's another lovely story. Um, I think if I had to choose a book, it would probably be Roald Dahl's The BFG,
Ooh.
because it was the first book that I remember reading that created my love of reading. I had always been a reader and always loved reading, but that was the first book that really kind of blew me away. And I still have my original copy back here on the shelves
Oh, that's
behind me.
awesome.
But it was kind of coincidence. My mother was coming home from town one day and she found a copy in the street. I don't know if somebody had dropped it or whatever. And it was a little bit like, torn and stuff. But she picked it up and she brought it home for me. She thought I might like it. Um, and yeah, I still have that exact same copy to this day. So it's one of my most treasured possessions. But I think that's because that's the book that really started it for me. I really fell in love with that story, and I still reread it every few years. And like I said, it's the exact same copy that I read when I was a kid. So I think that's probably because for me, it all started
Mm-hmm.
there. That has a special place in my heart.
That's amazing. I'm so happy you still have it.
Yeah, I think like I'm
Yeah.
very good with my stuff. And I think, again, like decluttering is one of those things that makes you realize what's truly important to you.
Right.
And that book, if anything ever happened to that book, I would be devastated. And I know I can get like other copies of it and I can still read the story and whatever, but it's that specific, like I
Of
was saying,
course.
sometimes your memories are not in things, but sometimes it is the specific thing
Mm-hmm.
itself. And for me, that specific book is it. So Roald Dahl for me, like I think in general, because again, it just reminds me of being a kid and reading all those wonderful stories. And I think his stories always have a message that's
Yeah.
always about, like just being a good, kind person. Um, and that is something that I have always strived to be. And I think a lot of it comes from reading his books, and they're full of like adventure and wonder and like a little bit of magic and stuff. So yeah, that's his stories are the first ones that I really fell in love with. I would say Enid Blyton as well. I used to love her books, but I know she's fallen out of favor now because obviously some of,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
her older stuff. And I'm rereading the Famous Five series that she wrote. And I can see now, as a grown up, obviously as a kid, you like all that stuff goes completely over your head. Um, but I think her stories are still wonderful. But Roald Dahl is probably, I'll go with the the one that's
Yeah.
less controversial.
Do you have any Irish writers that you like to recommend?
um, Goodness. So Marian Keyes is one of those writers. I think she's probably like a love it or hate it kind of writer. I don't know. But she's in that genre that's like technically chick lit, that a lot of people would maybe roll their eyes at. But her books are wonderful because, again, they're just about normal, everyday people, and they're so funny. And maybe you have to be an Irish person, I don't know, to get a lot of the references. But I think her books are like those kind of just, um, I think sometimes there's a little bit of snobbery. You think like, certain types of books like those, or like romance or whatever, um certain people feel that they're not proper
Mm-hmm.
books. But I think sometimes like reading is about entertainment. You don't always have to It doesn't always have to be something really highbrow. I read because I
Yeah.
want to be entertained, or I want to be relaxed, or I want to be comforted, or
Yeah. Get
whatever. And I think,
away.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think her books do that, and I don't have to put a lot of attention into them. Sometimes there's a place for reading something where you really want to pay attention and you really want to learn something and you want to dive deep into a topic. And then there are other times you just want to sit and just read a book and switch
Mm-hmm.
off. And I think Marian Keyes like writes those books perfectly. They're really funny, they're really relatable, a little bit madcap. So I think it kind of has a little bit of everything in it, but definitely one of those like just switch off and have some fun reading. Um, that's what her books are for me.
That's awesome. I'm gonna add her to my list because I
Yeah,
haven't
do
read.
it.
Yeah, I haven't read any of her stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, and I would say like choose kind of a few different ones. Like you're not going to love every single book she's written. I
yeah.
haven't loved every single one. But yeah, if you read one and it doesn't really work for you, I would
Mm-hmm.
still give her another go. And I think that's the same of all authors. Um, if you don't resonate the first time, that doesn't mean that you don't like them overall. Sometimes just a particular book is not for you.
Right.
Um,
Or at a particular moment, because I'm sure that
oh,
has happened to you as well, where you start to read something and it just doesn't work, and then you come back to it years later and it works
it's
now.
yes.
Yeah.
I find that all the time. I used to kind of have a lot of books on the go at any given time, and then I stopped doing that. And I decided, you know what, no, I'm just going to read one book at a time so that I can actually finish a book. But I found over the years that that wasn't going to work for me either, because like you said, sometimes I'm just not in the mood to read a particular book. Sometimes I want something lighthearted, and other times I really want to delve into something, or sometimes a particular storyline just isn't grabbing me in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's hitting a little bit too close to home with what I'm going through, or maybe I can't relate to it at all. Maybe it seems totally ridiculous to me. And then at a different stage in your life, or maybe just a different day of the week, it might suddenly become something that you're interested in. So I think there's something to be said for having like 2 or 3 books on the go at any given time, so that depending on your mood, you can pick up what suits you in the moment.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, Thank you, Laura. This was so
Oh, thank you.
lovely. Thank you for
Sorry,
spending.
sorry if I like rattled on a lot.
No, 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 never, never,
I
no.
have the gift of the gab. I think all Irish people are blessed with that gift.
I can relate. I can talk to the wall, so
Yep,
it's.
same.
I think it's just part of being a fabulous person.
Wow, I'm going to agree with that assessment.
But I'm so happy that we did this. I think that it went really great, and I
Thank
feel like a
you.
lot of people are gonna get something out of it. You
Oh, I
provided
really hope
such
so.
insightful information, and I'm
Well, like I said,
excited.
learned from bitter experience over the years.
Yeah,
I have a lot of lessons I've learned the hard way. So I try and share those so other people can
right.
avoid them.
Actually, you mentioned that you and I'll edit this out because people don't need to know this. That you were looking for an assistant or something, right? So you've probably thought of this, but just in case you haven't, I'll go ahead and share with you. If you reach out to the universities that are in your town,
Hmm.
you've done it.
I haven't done it, but yeah, I realized it recently because I
Yeah.
thought, there's all these people graduating or maybe looking for some sort of internship, or
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
I really want someone who's kind of at a stage where they're still enthusiastic about it,
Mm-hmm.
um, but not jaded by it.
Yes. Yes.
And I
That's
think when
exactly
you're,
where I'm at right now, and in that process of setting up an internship with our local university, because I feel like it's difficult to find someone. If you find someone that has a lot of experience, like you said, they've kind of been jaded already, they're over it.
Mhm,
They just, and I,
yeah,
I want someone who still has that like hunger,
enthusiasm.
thirst,
Yeah.
enthusiasm. That's just, yes, let's do this.
Yeah, and they're willing to like try things out, and they're
Yeah.
not kind of some like experience can be a great thing, but it can also be very limiting as well
Mm-hmm.
if you're used to doing things a certain way and you're not open to trying something new.
Right.
So yeah, that was definitely something that I have considered. I do have somebody who's kind of just come on board with me now, who is hopefully going to, because she like I'm a very detail oriented person, and I find it very difficult to like step back and see like big picture. So I'm more
Right.
like day to day, like, oh, I have to get a video up. So, and I can plan out my week. But in terms of like a year from now, 5 years from now, even 3 months from now, I'm not great at that sort of thing. So I have someone who's come on board with me now who's going to help me like strategize from a bigger picture perspective. So I'm really excited about that. And she does a lot of copywriting as well, which is really going to be very helpful for me because I am very wordy. So
Yeah.
she can just like chop all that down for me. Um, but yeah, I think like growing the team is a big part of like success for me,
Mm-hmm.
like what I would view as this becoming successful. Having other people involved in it would make it a lot more real. I think it's easy to sit down at your laptop and just type out a few words or record a video and stick it up and, not really think beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you've got other people as part of the team, I feel like that's when it will start to become more real for me.
For sure.
I'm
And
still at that stage where I'm like, oh, I'm still just like messing around with this. And I put a huge amount of work into it. Like I don't mess when it comes to the work that I put
right.
into it. But it still doesn't feel, maybe it will never feel like a proper job or like a career or like a company. Like it doesn't feel like, even though it's registered and everything,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like a company until I will have people actually
Right.
working in the company.
That's
So,
that's so
yeah.
exciting.
Do you
Yeah.
have any like advice, or how did you set it up, or
Oh, I mean, no, I feel like I'm so tiny. You probably have advice for me. But
nope?
our university they work with so what I did was I called and I said, I'm ready to, it's my alma mater, so I like pulled that card.
Oh, nice. Mine's in
Yeah.
Ireland, so a little bit more tricky.
Exactly, but honestly, I don't think it's necessary. So I just said, we're interested in looking for someone who is getting a degree in marketing and all that jazz, and they pointed me to the right department, which I think it's business something.
They have so many names
This
for
is
it as
how much
well.
attention I pay. So business something, and then they gave me the website, which they work with something called Handshake, which I think is what all the universities use.
Oh, that rings a bell.
Yeah. So and then that's where you set up your profile, and then they start sending you, the kids or young adults can start, getting in touch with you, saying they're interested, and you can start the whole interviewing process, which is where I'm at right now. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Yeah, well, that has been helpful in and of itself, because I was kind of like, what do I do? Do I just call them? Do I email them? Like, who do I call? Who do I speak to?
Right.
So yeah, that's been, and I think there are so many different names for it. Like in some colleges, it's like communications. In other
Yeah.
colleges, it's like digital marketing.
Right.
It just has all these different names. So I would like ring up and be like, hello, can
Yeah,
I
I
speak
thought
to somebody?
it would be communications, and then the lady was like, "Well, no, I think a better fit would be business something." What I'm like, okay, whatever. Just
Yeah.
point me
Connect me
to
to the
the
right.
find somebody that will help me. That's all
I'm
I
at, I'm
want.
100% at that stage. Just find somebody for me.
Yes, someone that will help me. That's young. That's with it, and I don't have to pay. That's
Yeah. I think for me, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm at that stage. Like, it's terrifying because I'm like, do I want to be responsible for someone's livelihood or someone's education? Or I feel like my business is still quite young, so there is a lot to learn in it. Like, I do feel like I would have, because I know some internships are just kind of like, here, come work for me for free, and they don't really teach
right.
anything. It's just like unpaid labor, whereas internships should really be about educating someone, and so that they can gain experience. And I often go back and forth, that imposter syndrome, like, do I have enough to teach? Like, are they really going to learn valuable skills? But then I'm like spending all day like trying to create like some Instagram carousel or something.
I think you have plenty to teach, and I
Hope
think
so.
if I were someone that was about to graduate college and this was my field, it would be, a no-brainer to work with someone like you.
Hope. Well, that's lovely.
No,
Thank you.
I mean that because, and you've been there in college thinking about, well, what will it feel like when I'm actually in my field?
And it's often very different to what
And
you learn in college.
it's
Yeah.
totally different because
Yep.
one thing is the methodology and another thing is the day to day.
Yes. And I found that with law as well, like practicing
Right.
was completely different to studying. And we did like
Exactly.
practice runs, we did, like we ran mock trials and stuff, but it's completely different when you
Right.
actually step into a courtroom. Everything you learned, it just goes out the window. Like, not in the sense that you forget it, but it just doesn't work like that
Right.
in the real world.
It's not in a controlled environment.
Yes.
Where, yeah.
And nobody's like standing there giving you feedback. Nobody is able to tell you, you need to do this or do that. Or, when I was studying, we had to do like a bail application, try to get somebody out on bail. And you were given like this whole set of, facts about them, and you would kind of recite that, and you put it into a speech, and like, oh, they're in college, or they're, they've got a young family or whatever. And you would like paint this picture of their life, and etc. And then you go into court and it's nothing like that. It's nothing like that at all. It's just kind of like you get about 30 seconds to like say, don't lock this person up. So it's very different. In college, you're given like 15 or 20 minutes to make your big, long, impassioned speech about, what a good citizen they are and how this was like a complete one-off, and etc. And that does not wash in court at all. Like, you would be tossed out on your ear. So it's very, the practical world, I think, and everything you learn in college, unless you have practical experience of that, it's very hard to translate what you learned in college to an actual job where what you learned, you're actually putting it into practice, and they're not the same thing. You have a foundation, but the real world will, tweak and mold that a lot.
It's a whole different set of rules. And these college people, they've lived this social media world for so long
Mm-hmm.
that, it's,
Jaded.
yeah, so I think you should go for it. I think you would
Oh,
be helping, whoever ends up at your doorstep. I really do.
oh, I do too, but it's just terrifying.
Yeah,
It's
no,
terrifying.
for sure, for sure. Honestly, the only reason why I decided to go for it was because some people that have come to, like, here, I'll show you, like, our little tiny studio.
Oh,
See,
cute.
here, I'll turn you around. See, look at the mess over there. I need to declutter that.
Listen, I've got all my painting stuff down here, so.
So they've said, they've expressed like, oh, I would love to intern here, and I'm like, what, really? I don't know about
Oh.
that. So then I decided, you know what? Yeah, it'd be good for me because I
Mm.
hate social media. I don't like it at all.
I do like it, but I'm too much of a perfectionist. Like I spend hours trying to create something,
Right,
and I,
right, and that's why it becomes unenjoyable for me because
yeah,
it's just this daunting thing of like putting up a picture and the thumbnail and the blah blah blah. So
yeah,
it might be a good relationship for all of us if
yeah.
if
And
I
I think
let go.
I have so much content now. Like I have so many videos and so many blog posts that there's pretty much endless content, like to take, quotes or whatever,
Hmm.
pictures from all of that content that I've already created and turn it into something. And I just do not have the time. Like that would require many, many man hours. And I know that I can get much more content up there because I have such a backlog of it. Like I have a massive archive of content that I could just churn out a
Right.
huge, like quote graphics and little, clips, like little reels and things from my videos, but I just do not have the time. I have to create new content, but I would love for someone to go back over the old content, or even like if I'm working on a
Hmm.
video, for them to take out little clips and quotes and snippets and things. That's always my plan. But by the time I finish working on one video, I'm like, okay, now I need to be working on the
Yeah.
next video. And it feels never ending. So yeah, I would really love
Yeah, I
somebody to
can.
just step in and be like, you know what, I'm going to look
Right.
at this video. I'm going to take out all the like quotes, or I'm going to take out like 5 tips
Hmm.
or whatever. And I'm going to turn it into a graphic or a carousel, or,
Right.
let's take this photograph. We've got this video coming up. So I think this photograph would work really well. Whereas for me, I like record the video and then I'm like, oh, what do I do for the thumbnail? Like, what do I do? What kind of
Yeah.
picture will match so that
Right.
I can put it on Instagram and promote it? Like, it's just it's constant. That's why it's like I'm very detailed. Like, I'm in the moment with something,
Hmm.
and it's very hard for me to step back. And I have always have grand plans of doing it, and I have like lists of things, but finding the time to
It's a
do all of
lot.
that,
It's a
yeah,
lot, and your channel has grown so much
yeah,
since since I found it. It's so exciting,
well,
but
yeah.
it's a lot. I can't imagine because I'm like tiny, 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 and I still feel like, oh my goodness, like there's a lot of work. I like it,
But
but it's a lot.
yeah, but I don't think you ever feel like you get to a stage where you're like, oh, I have this all handled now. Because like when I was much smaller, like there was pressure to like grow and
Hmm.
get bigger and to be everywhere and to really promote and push it out. And that never goes away. Like the bigger I get, like the more it is. It's like, okay, like I'm at whatever, like 97,000 subscribers. So I'm like, okay, I'm pushing for the 100. But then I'll get to the 100 and it'll be like, okay, next big milestone is like 500,000. Or I need to grow my Instagram to like 10,000 followers so I can get the swipe up, although the swipe up is on its way out now.
Oh, really?
There's just, yeah, they've replaced it now with like a sticker. You just press a little sticker.
Oh, see, you see how like ignorant I
They're
am?
testing it right now. So, I mean, I don't have the swipe up at all. Um, but some people now have a sticker where instead of swiping up, and I think the thinking behind it is because they want to switch over to a more TikTok where you would swipe up to get to the
Oh,
next
I
story
see. Okay.
rather than swipe across. But obviously, the swipe up feature is stopping them from doing that. And then with reels and stuff, like reels, you do swipe up, whereas stories, you swipe across. So I feel like they're trying to get a more
Hmm.
consistent feel to it. But as soon as they go the swipe up route, they can't then have the swipe up link. So I think they're going for a sticker. So they're testing it right now. And I've seen some people have it. I have neither.
Neither do I. But we'll get there. We will get
Yes,
there.
we will. But again, like I think I could get there faster if I was able to, like right now, I just put up a post kind of basically whenever I have the time to devote to it. And I do
Mm-hmm.
have like blocked time to try and spend on it. But I'm like, oh, an hour would be plenty to create an Instagram post. But it might not be. Sometimes it
Yeah.
is, and sometimes it isn't. Like it might be a carousel where I have to design several slides, or it might be like a reel. I've only done like a handful of reels. Maybe the caption, I spend ages writing that, or looking up hashtags, or just becomes a whole thing. And before I know
Right.
it, it's like 4 hours later and I still don't have a post to put up.
I can definitely relate. That's why I'm keeping my fingers crossed for this intern that I'm hoping is like so technologically with it that they can just be like, boom, done, yay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have templates and stuff and everything, and I just kind of like have to change the text. But there's just, again, like it sometimes requires me to go back over old content and like pull out,
Right.
tips from, if I want to talk about a particular topic, I'm like, oh, I've done a video on that. I have to go back and rewatch the video and like, what did I say in that video? What were the
Mm-hmm.
tips that I gave? Have I learned anything new since then? And it just becomes a whole, I need someone else to do, because a lot of that is very simple work. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not, like you require a degree for that type of thing, but
Right.
it can be very time consuming. And I need someone who understands social media enough to know like what will fit on each social platform and what is, the right thing to
Exactly.
focus on. So like Reels is really big on Instagram right now, obviously, but like I said, Twitter, I try and stay out of that completely.
Yeah.
TikTok, I don't really do either. But if I had someone else who was doing all that work for me and like,
Mm-hmm.
chopping up a little video, like a little 15-second clip from one of my videos, or editing it in such a way, it's like, please sign me up. I will take 10
Yeah.
of those people.
Do you ever, when you watch other video or previous videos that you've done, do you ever find yourself thinking like, oh, I shouldn't have said it this way, or I should have said it, I should have used this word? Because that
Yes, but I like
happens to
that.
me a lot.
Yes, but I have come to really enjoy that, because to
Okay.
me that shows that I've grown since then, that I've learned something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I find if I look back at a video and I think I've done it perfectly, that does not sit well with me, because I think, okay, I obviously have not evolved or grown or learned anything or improved since then. Like if I look back at an old video or read an old blog post and I think like that is wonderful, I could not like, improve on that. That's a worrying sign for me.
Yeah.
So if I look back on old videos and I'm not cringing,
Huh.
it's a
That's a
bad
good.
sign.
So then that means I'm normal.
Yes. Yeah. I would think so, 100%. If you look back at old stuff and it doesn't feel old to you,
Right.
then you probably have not progressed a whole awful lot in the meantime. And that's fine if you're looking at something from like last week or last month. But if I look at something from like a year ago, 2 years ago, and to me it looks great, then that's when I start to worry, because I think I have obviously learned nothing new
Yeah.
in all that time. And that's when I start to panic a little bit.
For
So
sure.
yeah, I think if you're not cringing when you look back at something, or you're not like second guessing something, or
Mm-hmm.
you're not thinking of ways that you could improve on it, that's when you need to worry.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's good news because I'm always cringing. I'm always like, I should have done it this way. I should have said this. I should have said that. Or I could have
Oh,
gone deeper into this point. And
mm-hmm.
it just becomes this like rabbit hole that I go into. And it's
Yeah,
not,
no, I think that's a good sign, because it means that you have learned something and you've grown since
yeah.
then, and you can then improve on that. Yeah, no, I would think that is like the way it should be. That's
Mm-hmm.
the way it should be.
Oh, good. Yay. Well, thank you so much.
No
I
worries. This has been fun.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm happy you had fun. If you're ever in Miami, you can come join us.
My husband was there a year or two ago for the Super Bowl. Whenever the Super Bowl was in Miami, he was there for that.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
really know much about football.
no,
I,
same.
I'm
Haven't a
just like,
clue.
what's happening? I don't
Yeah,
understand
team,
anything.
go team.
Yeah, it's like, okay, yes, we're playing. Good.
Yeah, yeah, I'm the same. My in-laws live in Orlando, so I'm kind of in the Florida direction
Oh,
sometimes.
nice. Yeah, you're
Um,
only like 3.5 hours away.
to me, that's like a lifetime away.
So have you been to Disney World already?
Yes, yeah,
Oh
we've
my
been once or
goodness.
twice. Love it. I love
That's
it. I'm such a
it's
child at heart.
I
Um,
know. I
but yeah, I'm in the Florida direction.
Yeah.
Um, every year, every 2 years. We obviously haven't. We weren't there last year because of everything.
Right.
We haven't. And my husband and my daughter went this year, but I didn't go this year because I was preparing to go home to Ireland. So, and I don't like flying. Do
Mm.
not like flying. So I was like, I can't do two flights. Um, but yeah, I've never been to Miami, but I'm sure I will be there sometime. And if I am, I will look you up.
Yes, and you can come to the our tiny little studio, and we can have fun in
Oh,
person.
cool. That'd be great. That'd be
I'll
fun.
treat you to Cuban coffee because that's like
Oh,
the big thing here. Even though I
oh,
don't
we
drink it
have
myself.
well, I don't drink coffee. My husband does. We have one of those Cuban, I don't know what they are, coffee things.
The Yeah, I don't know what they're called either. The little kettle looking thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's some guy that he knows gave it to him and said it was like some Cuban specific thing.
Yes. It's
I
like
don't know.
Cuban coffee's like crack. It's so strong. It's so bad. I don't drink it.
I don't
But
drink
everyone
any type of
claims that
coffee.
it's delicious.
Oh, no, I think I might have to prove them wrong there. I don't know. I don't drink coffee or I don't drink any hot drinks.
Oh
I'm like
no.
pretty much water. Yeah, like to me, I'm like drinks should be cool and refreshing.
That's
I don't really
true.
understand
Yeah.
hot drinks. I don't drink tea. I don't drink coffee. And not drinking tea, like coming from Ireland, like tea is big in
I
Ireland. Um,
know.
so that's a big like, and I don't drink alcohol either, which is another big
Yeah.
thing in
I don't
Ireland.
drink alcohol. I was a coffee drinker, but I stopped
Ah,
a month ago.
oh wow, well
So
done.
let's see how long that lasts.
How are you
Um,
finding it?
I'm okay because I wasn't drinking it for like the caffeine. It was more like the
Hmm.
comfort of just like
Yeah,
having something
a
and
warm mug.
associating like an activity with winding down.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I saw myself in the mornings being super cranky and just nasty until I had coffee. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it, so I was like, you know what, this needs to stop. It's
Oh, well done.
there's no point in being this, like junkie like I need
Need my
coffee.
fix. Yeah.
Yeah. So I stopped and it's been
Well
okay.
done.
Yeah. I have tea, which is like another warm drink, so it's not like I feel
Yeah.
like I'm missing a lot.
And that's kind of like what I was saying with the shopping habit. Like you can
Yeah.
just replace it with something that still gives you the same feeling of
Exactly.
like newness and excitement and adventure without necessarily having to go shopping.
Right.
Um, so well done. That's great though.
Thank you. I'm trying. Let's see.
So
I'm
far, so good.
resisting. Haven't missed it yet. So,
Good. Well, that's a good sign. Like if you're a month in and you haven't missed it, I think you're doing well.
yeah. Yeah. I think that the attachment has finally broken.
Yeah, I find like I gave up chocolate years ago, and
Chocolate.
I was too
Oof.
addicted to it. It was like taking over my life.
Yeah.
Um, and I never intended to go cold turkey, but I just like I used to go through phases where I kind of stop eating it for a few days, and then try and slowly reintroduce it, and then I'll just go crazy again. So it was never intentional, but kind
Hmm.
of as the days went past, because I'm such a perfectionist, I was like, well, no, I already have like a streak of days now, so I don't want to break that.
Right.
Um, and it turned into 7 years. um,
That's amazing.
but still, if I see it or smell it, I'm still kind of like, oh, I'd love some.
Wow.
But I
Yeah.
just don't and that's when perfectionism works in my favor.
Right.
Because there are things like that where I've been off it now for so long that I couldn't break it. I couldn't. It's
That would
just
be a
like,
shame.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been like, it'll be 7 years in December. It was the day after Christmas
That's
that I quit 7 years ago
amazing.
because I had eaten so much over Christmas that I thought, you know what, like, no, I need to have a break for a few days. So I
Right.
thought. Um, but yeah, I think that is when perfectionism does work in my favor, because right now, breaking that streak would be, I would really
It would be
feel that.
devastating.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really would. I would feel like I had done all that for nothing, basically, even though like 7 years would still be like a huge achievement.
Hmm.
And even if I only ate like a tiny bit of chocolate and then went back to not eating it, that would
You
not sit
know.
well with me. Yeah.
Yeah. You
So,
know. Oh,
mhm.
that's so cool. Yeah. I
So
don't know if
that's,
I had the willpower to give up chocolate or
I never
cheese.
thought, I never thought I did. I had tried it multiple times before, had never stuck. And then this time, like I said, it was totally unintentional. I had completely overindulged over Christmas and just thought, you know what, like I need a few days. Um, and then after a few days, I was kind of like, oh, this is going kind of well. Maybe I should try and keep it up another few days. And before I knew it, yeah, years had gone by.
That's amazing. Oh, that's so
But
cool.
I still struggle with it sometimes.
Do
But
you
yeah,
let it into the house?
Yeah, like my husband eats it and my daughter sometimes
Oof.
eats it. So it's hard, but and like listen, I do not have a healthy diet at all. It's not like I don't eat like candy and ice cream and
Yeah.
stuff. So it's like I have, replaced it with other
Hmm.
things, but yeah, the chocolate itself. But I'm trying now. The last few weeks, I've been really making a bigger effort. Just like my health is struggling a lot, my physical health, and I just know myself that I don't want to, like, if I continue, and that was kind of the stage I was getting to with chocolate as well. I was like, if I continue down this road, I'm going to get diabetes. Like,
Oh
there's
yeah.
no question of it. And now I'm kind of back at that stage again, where I'm like, if I continue to consume the amount of sugar that I am and like processed stuff, um, it's not going to lead to a good ending.
Hmm.
So I'm trying. I'm again trying to do that whole like progress towards perfection. Like I didn't say like I'm going to cut out all sugar and only eat like leafy
Right.
greens or anything, but just trying every day to make some small little improvements, like drink a little bit more
Hmm.
water, like not have like a mid-afternoon snack just because. Like I find I'm
Right.
a very bored eater. Like I eat for something to do.
Me
If I'm
too.
working and I start to like lose my focus a little bit, my brain immediately thinks eat something.
Yeah.
That will give you something to do. And I'm a very emotional eater as well. Like if I'm
Hmm.
sad or happy or anything, any sort of emotion.
Yeah, me too. Like I'll celebrate with food. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
this
Or
went great. Let me grab a cupcake. Or
yeah, or
I
comfort
feel
with food as
crappy. Let
well.
me grab a cupcake.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% me.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to kind of recognize that now and, pause. Like when I feel that craving, because I read a book recently and it was talking about, cravings and
Hmm.
um, how they really only last for a few minutes. And if you can just kind of sit with it for a few minutes, it will be gone, rather than really trying to resist it or give into it or anything.
Yeah.
Or really thinking, like I'm craving it, like this is terrible. I need to do something. Just
Hmm.
kind of sitting and knowing, like in a few minutes, this will have passed. And that's helped me rather
Yeah.
than like immediately grabbing something or thinking like this is terrible. I'm going to be like with the
I'm gonna
shakes all
starve
day.
to death.
Yeah. Instead of,
Yeah.
thinking that it's going to have this terrible outcome. Just thinking, you know what, in a few minutes this will pass and I'll be back
Yeah.
into like doing regular
A
work or
friend
whatever.
advised me when those moments come up to either
Mm.
drink water or do something
Yeah.
like an activity, like go for a walk around the
Yes.
block or
And I
whatever,
think,
just to
yeah,
like get your mind to focus on something
something
else.
else. Yeah. And I think that's a
Yeah.
lot, that's a huge part of it. Like I said, that craving only lasts for a few minutes. So if
Hmm.
you can distract yourself or do something else for those few minutes, the time will pass.
Yeah.
And then you'll be back to normal. And I do find that, like, if I kind of think, okay, I'll just finish off working on this email or whatever it is, then the moment has passed and I'm like back in the groove of work or doing something. But it can be tricky. So I'm very impressed by your coffee. That's a big one to
Well, it's
kick.
only been a month, so I'll
A
keep
month
you
is a long
posted.
time though. Like the first few days are always the worst.
Yeah.
Always the worst. Did you find you had like headaches or
No, not really. But I
no, so you weren't too bad.
think, yeah, it wasn't too bad. That's why, it hasn't felt such a big change. I think it
Mm,
was more, like I said, I never felt like what people say they feel like all peppy once they have their cup of coffee. That was never me. It was more
mm,
for like the comfort of just this drink that meant I got to sit down and chill for a little bit.
yeah, yeah. It's more
Um,
the feeling associated with it than the
yeah,
actual,
the
yeah. I did find that when I gave up chocolate, I found I had crippling headaches for the
oh
first
yeah.
3 days. And then they started to ease off, but I still had them for about a week. But the first 3 days were rough, like really rough. And that's, I suppose, a sign as well that I had obviously had a problem.
You were detoxing.
Yeah, which is why it's great, like for your coffee, like it obviously wasn't, as big a thing for you. But
Right.
still a healthier choice maybe overall for you. Um, but yeah, the chocolate for me was really
That's
just tough
impressive. Oh
going.
my
And I feel like
goodness.
if I went back and then went off again, I'd have to go through all that again.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, that's not a place I want to go back to. But yeah, it's been so long that I couldn't. But yeah, it's interesting for me. Like the cravings never fully. I don't necessarily crave it, but
Hmm.
if I see it or I smell it, then I'm like, oh, that's lovely. I would love to just nibble on it.
Just a little bite.
Yeah, but kind of day to day, like I don't just be sitting down and think, oh, I'd love some chocolate right now. But yeah, if I do see it or smell it, then I'm like, oh. So, it's like with the advertising, once you stay away
Yes,
from it, if you kind of like stay away from the temptation, most of the time you don't notice. It's only when you're
that's true.
faced with it, like the resistance, trying to resist once you've been faced with it is much harder than just avoiding it
Right.
completely.
That's when it
Yeah.
comes back.
Mm.
That's so crazy how it works. It's a lot to deal with. We have a
Oh yeah,
lot.
but we're
Modern
getting there.
life. My goodness.
Every day, one step closer.
Well, thank you again so much. I had such a lovely time with you. And
Yeah, me
hopefully,
too.
yeah, we get to do this again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Send me on all the details of like when it's live and where
Yes.
it is and links and all that sort of stuff, and I can share it then. But yeah, this was really fun. Thanks so much.
No, thank you. And yes, usually the turnaround time that I'm looking at right now, it's about a week and a half to 2 weeks.
Okay,
So,
yeah,
but I'll keep you posted with like a certain date and the whole thing.
do, and then I
Thank
can
you,
get it.
Laura.
No
Have a
worries.
great
Thank
rest
you.
of your Tuesday.
You too, and a great
And
rest of your week.
yes, the rest of your week. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
You will. Bye.
Bye.